The following podcast is a presentation of This Is Infamous. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, ladies and gents, to another brand spanking new edition of Intelligent Wrestling Conversation. That's right, the IWC podcast has returned for this week with yours truly, Billy Donnelly, in tow to have another intriguing and thought-provoking discussion about the world we love so much, the world of professional wrestling. Big show on tap for you this week, but really, should you expect anything less week in and week out from this particular podcast? I think not. A resident guru, Tom Nix, going to be joining me later in the show. First, we got some homework to go over, dating back to the Progress Orlando show over WrestleMania weekend, so we'll get into that. Also going to be talking with Tom about the WrestleCircus iPPV that Rich Bocchini and him just really hard sold me on last week. So we're going to be talking about the highlights and the lowlights of that particular show. And I imagine plenty of discussion about the Space Monkey because it's near and dear to my heart. I can't avoid that. And coming up in just a little bit, Brandon Stroud, pro wrestling editor at UPROXX.com, going to be joining us on the This Is Infamous hotline to break down WWE Payback, the highlights and lowlights there, and I guarantee you we'll be talking quite a bit about the House of Horrors. I told you, plenty to look forward to this week as the show rolls on, but before we get fully started, a couple of points that I do want to discuss. Number one, a big story as we're going to talk about the NWA for a few moments. That's right, the NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance. You may know that brand as being the origins of WCW, World Championship Wrestling. And you also may be saying to yourself, Billy, I thought the NWA was dead. And you know what? In many respects, you're probably right. The NWA as a whole has not been entirely relevant for quite some time. I can't even put really a number of years on it to truly tell you how long it's been since the NWA was truly relevant. You'd probably have to go back to the very beginning of TNA, or what is now Impact Wrestling, when they sort of had a deal to have the NWA Championship be their main title. But other than that, it's been quite some time since the NWA name has really meant anything. I mean, it's out there, it floats around, there's some independent federations or organizations that license the NWA name because they think it still counts for something, and it does. I mean, it's a brand, it's been around for a really long time, so as a result, there's still some value to it, but by and large, nobody really considers the NWA a meaningful part of anything anymore. So to talk about the NWA on any wrestling podcast in the year 2017, well, something must have happened. Because otherwise, why would we even bring it up? Well, an interesting piece of information has come to light now, and that is that Billy Corgan, lead man of the Smashing Pumpkins, who for a time was involved with TNA Wrestling and made a real financial power play to acquire that company, has purchased the NWA brand. Now, what does this mean for the NWA and Billy Corgan? I don't know, probably not much. It means a guy who made a lot of money in the music industry with a passion and a love for professional wrestling can now be involved with professional wrestling on his own dime. Perhaps as a fan running a company, maybe he can do something that would interest wrestling fans. Maybe wrestling fans will get behind the NWA at some point. I wouldn't talk about it on a global level, maybe not even a national level. You might get some small regional interest from fans who say, this NWA thing is kind of interesting. I mean, let's not forget, we're going to talk about WrestleCircus later in the show, and up until fairly recently, nobody even knew what the hell that was. So you put on good shows, you put on good cards, you get good talent, you'll get attention. And maybe Billy Corgan can bring that to the NWA brand, which, once again, a lot of people didn't even know still existed at this point. So it's good for the NWA to have a name like Billy Corgan get involved because he brings some clout to it. This isn't just a guy off the street saying, hey, pay attention to my indie fed. This is Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins, who has millions of dollars of financial backing to put into this. So it could mean some regional TV around the United States if the NWA brand can sort of get some value back to it. This isn't going to be one of those things where you go, oh, look, it's going to be a real number 2 competitor to the WWE. That's not going to happen. Those days of the NWA are long gone. So we're not going to see those anytime soon. But could the NWA be something of note? Perhaps. I mean, it's not like the NWA was doing anything now. I was shocked to hear that anybody put money into the NWA. Might as well light your money on fire at this point. But yeah, it's a brand name. It's got some value. It's got history. It's got a legacy. So maybe it's better than starting something up from scratch. At least it's easier than starting something up from scratch. So I wish Billy Corgan the best of luck. Good luck to you, Billy Corgan. And maybe you'll make the NWA into something. It won't ever be what it once was. That's for sure. But could it be something that we keep an eye on? Something that we put on our radar? Something that maybe, perhaps, has the ability to grab our attention if it's putting on some good shows? Hey, I'm willing to give Billy Corgan the benefit of the doubt. And I'm willing to give him some leeway. And I hope him all the best. Because as wrestling fans, the more quality wrestling shows that are out there, the more opportunities for wrestling talent to sort of hone their craft and get better. We're the ones that reap the benefits. I mean, they get paid. And they get a chance to get better. And we get to watch the thing that we love more and more and more. So good luck to Billy Corgan and his new purchase of the NWA. I hope you got it on sale. Okay, to shift gears for a couple minutes, I got to talk about this Sean Waltman thing because, this is really concerning, and this isn't. I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to pass judgment. I'm not going to cast stones. What I do want to do is I do want to speak out and kind of let you know what the latest is that's going on with him. And sort of where the focus needs to be next. This past weekend, Sean Waltman was arrested at Los Angeles International Airport. He was in possession of methamphetamine as well as marijuana, trying to get that through customs. But it appears that the possession may be the least of the troubles when all is said and done. They believe now that he may have had intent to sell, which carries with it another world of problems just added onto this. In addition, when he was arrested, they found 2 outstanding warrants that were already out for him. One for a previous DUI and another one in Pennsylvania for something else. And, this is really a horrible situation. And this isn't just, trying to defend Sean Waltman as Sean Waltman the wrestler. This is a guy who has, over the years, whether you knew him as X-Pac or as Six or as the 1-2-3 Kid or as Sean Waltman, who is still, like us, a human being. And, not to defend anything that Sean Waltman has done. Some of it, DUI, that's indefensible. And trying to sell, meth, not exactly a charming quality or attribute that someone carries with them. But Sean Waltman has had a number of issues over the years, particularly pertaining to substance abuse. And I got to think that as much as people thought Sean Waltman was doing okay for himself. Sean Waltman's got his own podcast. Sean Waltman's been speaking out and making more appearances as of late. Sean Waltman, like many other addicts, be it Scott Hall or Jake the Snake or anybody else, every day walk a very fine line where they risk slipping back into unsavory behaviors and habits. And look, my heart goes out to this guy because I'd like to see him get better. I'd like to see him do well. This is something that's going to hang over him every single day for the rest of his life, battling this disease. Because I have a hard time thinking that Sean Waltman of sound mind and body is trying to get drugs through customs to sell them someplace, particularly in the UK. So, it is a horrible situation, and, we'll keep an eye on it. But all I can say, I don't know that Sean Waltman's listening to this podcast, but if he is, or someone who knows him who is, the best thing we can do is just try to get this guy help. The last thing we want to see is Sean Waltman on another name added to the list of wrestling personalities whose lives have gone off the rails and into a real dark, horrible, unrecoverable place. Sean Waltman needs help. Sean Waltman needs to fight this. Sean Waltman needs to get better. There will be consequences for Sean Waltman's actions, that is for sure. But the one thing that we need to focus on is trying to get Sean Waltman better, hoping that maybe this is what jars something loose in his mind that says, yeah, I need help. I can't manage this all by myself. So, I hope for Sean Waltman's sake, he can figure this out before it's too late. Because right now, this is not the path that you want to be traveling down. And I wish that he's okay moving forward. And we'll see what comes of this whole really unfortunate and terrible situation. With that said, let's move on to talk the brunt of the show. Let's get into a whole lot of wrestling. Joining me right now on the This Is Infamous hotline, he is the pro wrestling editor at UPROXX.com, running a little section over there called With Spandex. You can also follow him on Twitter at Mr. Brandon Stroud. He's got a lot of other projects going on outside the squared circle as well that you're going to want to be aware of if you follow him there. And he's one of my good friends to talk wrestling with here and there whenever it is that we get a chance to connect. So here you go, Brandon Stroud on Intelligent Wrestling Conversation. Right where he belongs. Brandon, how the hell are you, man? Thanks for making it back to the show.
I'm doing well, thank you. As I was telling you before we taped, I was recently in a car accident on my way home from Los Angeles. So if I'm not the most engaging personality this time, I do apologize. I have a light concussion. And also on Sunday, I had to watch a haunted house match. So things aren't really going well in my brain right now.
Listen, if Finn Balor can finish a match with a slight concussion, and Jeff Hardy can finish a match where his tooth is physically removed from his head, I have full confidence in your abilities to finish this podcast all the way through.
Here's the good news: is that I eat nerves and I produce results. I love that Finn Balor couldn't say shit on Raw. He was like, I eat it and then I produce results. I make results. I go potty and I make.
I mean,
it was kind of sad.
Isn't that how it all works? Don't we all eat something and then produce?
That's a good point, I guess.
It's just the biology of the matter. So the reason I brought you on for this particular show was, is to get your feedback, get your thoughts, get your ideas on WWE Payback, the pay-per-view special event, whatever it is that we're calling it this month for Raw. Now, let me just preface this before I get into your thoughts with the fact that it wasn't until a couple of weeks prior to this show that I learned this was actually a Raw exclusive event. With the way that the card had been laid out, the House of Horrors match, Chris Jericho versus Kevin Owens, I was really under the impression following the Superstar shakeup that this was going to be a SmackDown show. And it wasn't until I started hearing more of matches that my friend Steve had to convince me that this was a Raw show, and then I was kind of pissed about it.
Yeah, here's the thing I don't get is I get that the Superstar shakeup kind of messed up their booking plans, you know? I mean, because it was clearly just sort of like we decided this on like a Sunday afternoon. This is going to be a Superstar shakeup. So I get that, but I don't know why, since they're in control of everything and in control of their own universe and in control of all their shows and they own their own network and the show's being broadcast on a network they own, why they didn't just say that it was a co-branded pay-per-view. Like, I don't know why they didn't just be like, Raw and SmackDown present this, even though, you know, because of the shakeup, maybe this is interpromotional now. I don't know why they didn't just do that. I don't know why they were like, this is a Raw show featuring a non-title WWE Championship haunted house match and then a United States title match where whoever wins, they go to SmackDown. I don't know why they didn't just make it co-branded.
Or wait.
or just move the damn matches to Backlash. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that it's not like that would have been unheard of to just be like, hey guys, so we're gonna take some time and just wait. And I don't think anyone would have been like, I don't think anyone would have been upset. I don't think anyone would have been like, what? You mean I have to wait like a couple of extra weeks to watch this House of Horrors match? God damn it. And then like the table flips. I don't think anyone would have been, you know, that put out for them.
They also could have used that time to decide what a House of Horrors match is supposed to be. That would have been nice.
Yeah.
Also, it's not a House of Horrors match. It's a House of Horrors match. You have to do that Northeastern accent where the Venerans were competing in a House of Horrors match.
All right, so now that that's all been laid out, let's get into, I guess, overall general impressions. What were your thoughts? I guess what were your expectations going into WWE Payback, and then what was your overall impressions watching the card play out?
Okay, well, I've been writing about WWE for a living for a while now, so as always, my expectations were very low, and that sounds really pessimistic and like I'm being a jerk, but I think that's the best way to watch WWE shows. You go in not really expecting much, and then if something happens, you're like, oh, okay, that was nice. So my overall impression of the show is I really enjoyed the show. Like, if you take the House of Horrors out, it's a really good show. There's a lot of good wrestling. It's kind of boring sometimes, but it's good boring wrestling, you know? And they moved forward some storylines, and they had some title changes, and you know, even the non-eventful stuff was kind of fun, like Rollins Joe. I'm sure we'll go through the card, but you know, I liked the show. If it had just been a Raw show and you had replaced the House of Horrors with, I don't know, a Universal Championship match of some kind, maybe, I would have really liked it. I would have. I'm sure we'll go into it in more detail, but a lot of what they did, I really dug. And it was actually kind of disappointing in retrospect that haunted house match is on this show because it's so out of place and it's such a pile of garbage that it just kind of stinks up the rest of the show. Similarly, and again, we'll get into this, I'm sure, I was live for Unforgiven 1999. And I don't know if you remember that show. But there's a lot of good wrestling on that show that is completely forgotten because that's also the show where the Kennel from Hell happened. And I feel like Payback 2017 is the Unforgiven 99 of this decade, where everything else that happens on the show is going to be completely forgotten because of that bullshit. So,
yeah, I mean, like, I think you're dead on in terms of really setting the bar low for what a WWE show is going to be. Like, I remember once upon a time when like Sunday rolled around and there was a pay-per-view and you were like excited about it. Like you were really, you didn't know what was going to come from it. You didn't know where things were going to go, how things were going to play out. But the way the matches had been built, and even the matches that were put together, you were sort of jazzed about what you were going to see. Now, like Sunday rolls around, you go, oh, hey, I think Payback's on tonight. And then you go, yeah, I guess I'll sit in front and watch it and hope it doesn't royally suck ass from beginning to end. Like, you just hope there's like a nugget you can pluck from it and go, well, that was worth it.
Well, the problem is because they've turned these pay-per-views into episodes of Raw. Like, they're 3 hours long, and you hope for a nugget. That's what Raw is. And Raw is 3 hours because it's good business for them. They can get more advertisers, and there's more show, and it sacrifices creativity, and it sacrifices storytelling, and all the stuff that you would actually maybe enjoy from a show. And it just is like, well, doing better business and making more money is more important than having any creative fulfillment. And in pro wrestling, it's kind of difficult to ever look for creative fulfillment. And pay-per-views, I think, have become the same thing, where they have to do X amount of gear and they have to be X amount of hours long and feature specific talent. So it's less about what happens and more that something's happening every few weeks. And I think that's the frustrating thing, is there's not really anything special about them at all. Which is why when WrestleMania comes along, or when SummerSlam comes along, and they actually build sort of an event around the weekend, it feels like it's an important thing, whether it's good or not, because it is, because that's how it used to be presented. I think the introduction of the In Your House pay-per-views in the 90s were the beginning of the end, kind of, for pay-per-view, which is funny, because that's like when pay-per-view kind of took off. So I'm an idiot. But, I feel like creatively that's it. I was that kid who, I believe the first pay-per-view that we got in our house was Halloween Havoc 89, which had the Thunderdome with the Great Muta and Terry Funk against Ric Flair and Sting, and the Great Muta missed went up his nose and he had a big hanging booger. It's a great match. Check it out. But I was that kid who'd order like Super Brawl 92, and I'd be like on my stomach in the living room on a pallet, like a blanket laid in the floor, like my chin on my hands, like watching, the Steiner brothers wrestle. And it's just like, yeah, this is the important moment of my quarter, because this is like,
yeah, I mean, we watch them all, and you know what? And I think you make a great point, which is that if you weren't paying $10 a month for the WWE Network, would you lay out $40, $45 to watch Payback? Because I don't know that you would.
If I didn't have to for work.
Yeah, for what? Yeah, if it wasn't the foundation for your continued employment,
Right.
would you? But like, would the average fan do that? Would you look at this card and say, I'm compelled to watch that? And and I think it raises a great point of complacency. At one point in time, they needed to work for your dollars. They needed to work for that buy rate. And as a result, every show needed to feel unique or special. And now it just feels like wallpaper. Like everything just feels like it blends into the fabric. And yeah, I think that's a point that we overlook quite often, which is that they have lost the specialness of their shows by having them all feel the same.
And I don't think they care. I mean, that's the important thing to remember. It's not to insult them or to say that like they don't care because they hate us or something. It's just that they don't care. It's why the pay-per-view sets just became the Raw sets. It's just it's money saving, and it's good business. It cuts their bottom line. It's like it's just what they want to do, and since they are the biggest game in town, they get to do whatever they want to do. They're not really pressured to try harder because they don't have to, because they're winning. Mm-hmm. So what they're doing works, whether we like it or not. And that's kind of the way of the world these days. Globalization and gentrification is just people in charge. They just do the least amount that they can, and it's fine, because that's just what they do, and we just accept it. And that's a bummer if you're like a creative type, or you're watching it because you want to get something out of it other than just flashing lights and loud noises. But I mean, I feel like that's kind of the way it is, and it sucks, but you kind of have to put it out of your brain and watch the show with that suspicion of disbelief, both in the actions of pro wrestling as a real sport, in quotes, and also as a TV show. So you just kind of have to be like, well, this is the thing I decided I like.
Yeah, and it sucks to be in that spot where you're also now like the guy who like tells people about the glory days. You know, when you're like back in the day, and then like you hear the words like come out of your mouth, and you're like, oh, that's me now. But it's kind of true,
right? And when you go back and look at the glory days aren't that good either. Yeah. So it's like we've always liked this thing for stupid people and babies. Like it's just the truth.
Yeah, it has. Some stuff has not aged well at all. Just not at all.
Absolutely not. But at the same time, you know, it is what it is, and you like it for what you like. And the thing about pro wrestling is, and we always describe it, it's like a bad relationship. It's like an abusive relationship. You get beaten up by it a lot, but then at your worst moments, you're like, well, if I just stick around, those good moments are so good. I just can't not have that next good moment. And, you know, for every few months we sit through, you know, Roman Reigns just squashing everyone and it being boring, we get that one show where Braun Strowman beats him up and puts him on a stretcher and then rolls the stretcher off of a ledge and then puts him in an ambulance and flips the ambulance. And you're like, this is why I watch this show. This is awesome. And then you get, you know, I'm exaggerating, of course, but maybe like 6 more months of just terrible TV. And then you get one episode where like Bray Wyatt sprouts wings and flies away, and you're like, what the hell? This is great. So I don't know.
All right, let's dive into the show because as you have so poignantly laid out, I don't know how we don't start with the House of Horrors, because this is sort of the cloud.
Can we know that?
Yeah, I mean, it's the cloud that just looms over the whole show. And really, what I found sort of watching it was that Payback was a tale of two shows. You had the prior to the House of Horrors, the HOHBC, I guess, so to speak, and then you had everything after the House of Horrors, which felt distinctly different. Felt different watching it on my couch. Felt different there in seeing it in the arena. Right. So I think it has to be the center point of this show, because how could we not talk about how it affected and infected everything else that goes out from there? So the House of Horrors was Randy Orton versus Bray Wyatt in a convenient non-title match on a Raw pay-per-view. Now,
in a house that was supposed to be a house of horrors that wasn't really full of horrors. It was just like a poor person's house, and it was very clearly like in not San Jose, because it was pitch black at 6:30, and it was a match that was built around, it starts in a place that isn't the wrestling arena, but it has to end in the wrestling arena in the ring, which adds an unnecessary amount of travel to a pro wrestling match. Because they didn't like provide a tram. There wasn't just like a shuttle bus from one place to the other where they're like, okay, guys, when you're done fighting in this spooky house, get on the tram and we'll take you to the arena. Like, they had to figure that shit out on their own. So Randy Orton like rents a limousine, I guess, and then takes his shirt off and rides in the limousine to the haunted house where he's going to have a wrestling match. It isn't even haunted. It just has some hue light on the outside of it. I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't know where to begin with this. It's the most frustrating thing mentally for me in a very long time, and that includes a car accident in which I received a concussion.
I mean, the thing about it was going in, no one knew what this was. No one knew what the House of Horror was.
They didn't know what it was.
No, they didn't. They couldn't tell you. You didn't know. And I'm pretty sure up until about 15 minutes before they actually did it, they were still like tossing around ideas about where they could take this thing. They knew they had the pre-tape, but beyond that, they were like, well, but what do we do after the pre-tape? Guys, throw some stuff on the whiteboard and let's figure it out. And so as a result, you know, that's not a good foundation for a match when you have an audience unable to be captivated by something that they don't know what it is. They don't know what it is. They don't know how it's put together. It wasn't until I think JoJo got into the ring and announced that it was going to start in this house and then have to finish in the arena that people were like, oh, okay, and like still half confused. Like even as the words flowed out of her mouth, you were like, I don't know if this makes any sense. And then the match just started with Randy Orton shirtless in the back of a limousine showing up to a house In
like a Knight Rider limousine, like a weird limousine with like lights on the front of it.
But considering that Payback was taking place in San Jose, I was in San Jose for WrestleMania, so like I kind of had a feel for what the town is like. I don't remember any random creepy houses driving property values down in the middle of Silicon Valley.
And I don't think Bray Wyatt is supposed to be from San Jose. So did he buy a house in San Jose? This is all kayfabe, by the way. Like, I'm not asking in real life. Like, did Bray Wyatt, the character, previously own a spooky house in San Jose? So he knew Payback was going to happen in San Jose. So he's like, hey, Randy, man, when we have a match in San Jose, how about we make it a House of Horrors? Because I've got this real estate that's haunted nearby that we could wrestle in. Like, did he already have that, or did he agree to the match and then be like, well, I got to have a haunted house, and then actually go around looking for a house and then procure it and then get the rights to shoot there and then haunt it? Like, what happened? Like, how was this even set up? Because if they had been like, hey guys, Bray Wyatt's from the Bayou, right? He was originally from like New Orleans or whatever, right? Because his daddy owned a shrimp boat. I remember that from FCW. Because his dad was Captain Mike Rotundo. But and then when he was in NXT, the idea was that he was like a panhandle, like Swamp Billy, right? So if the match had happened in, say, like, I don't know, Tallahassee, right? And they had been like, hey, Bray Wyatt's compound's near here, so we're going to have a House of Horrors match. It's going to start at that place that we previously established via multiple videos. Bray Wyatt, like, he lives here, he's going to wrestle here, and then they're going to fight all the way to the arena. Like, there could have at least been some sort of, like, understood suspension of disbelief. Of,
see,
like,
but we can't do that because we burned that place down.
Right. Right.
So, like, there was no foresight. Like, maybe we don't burn down the place where we could have the match.
What else does Bray have? Is the idea? Is he like a real estate mogul? Does he just have haunted houses nearby?
And what's the upkeep on a place like this? Like,
It wasn't even haunted. It was just a poor person's house.
But even then, like, do you decidedly like have, you know, like a maintenance guy like make your house shittier like for the match? Like, hey,
right.
I got this match in like 2 weeks. Don't come by and clean. Like, just leave.
It's like when you have a hair versus hair match and you grow your hair out suspiciously long before it happens. You're just like, oh no, my hair's on the line. Yeah, so here's the thing, okay? Like, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but you book a House of Horrors match, right? You book the House of Horrors, and you're going to have a wrestling match in a haunted house, right? The entire setup of this match is Randy Orton enters a room, feels a little nervous about how spooky the room is, and we get like jump scare shots of like spooky sound effects. I'm saying spooky so much. Sound effect CD and like a scary thing. And then Bray Wyatt just like runs in and punches him a bunch. And then he leaves. And then Orton goes to like another room. And then you repeat it. And the only thing that they put in this entire damn house that's even kind of spooky is one room where they hang some dolls from the roof, like from the ceiling. That's the only thing spooky. There's no anything spooky in this house. It's just a poor person's house. To the point they end up in a kitchen and the spooky shit that they're fighting with is like frying pans and a fridge. Like, that's not a horror. Like, it's not a House of Horrors. You went into a poor person's house where they had some dolls that were kind of creepy, and that's it.
And even then, they're so cliche. Like, it's like,
right? Like, there's a ghost tractor, and it's not even a ghost tractor. It's just a tractor that's on. Like, it's just no one's driving the tractor, but it's not like the tractor's like doing its work. It's just a tractor's rolling by.
It just
like,
drives by.
And Bray Wyatt has like decorative lights outside of his house. Like, that's all that happens that's spooky. Like, you couldn't have like a room of fire or like a room with like a corpse in it or something, since like Sister Abigail got burned, or like Eric Rowan just like chilling in the background in like a mask with like a bunch of the spooky kids. Because if you remember, they did this once before where they tried to do the final deletion with New Day and the Wyatt family. And at least then they had like a weird like hillbilly fight club thing going on with like a bunch of people in the woods with like masks and like lights and stuff. Like, it least that would have been like, okay, the predetermined Wyatt compound of like frightening imagery, right? Here it's just a tractor and some lights and some dolls and then a fridge and some frying pans. Like, I don't know who booked this. I don't know who wrote this. I don't know who agreed to this. I don't know who filmed this and like gave the green light and was just like, yes, we should put this on our like multi-million-dollar like publicly traded like globally broadcast wrestling pay-per-view. I don't know who booked any of this. I'm sorry to just ramble, but it's so frustrating.
No, it's true, and it's. What I got out of watching this was that whoever produced it doesn't know shit about horror, like nothing at all. Like from
Right.
from the shot selection to the cliches of what they thought would be in a house of horror. I have seen better low budget walk-through haunted houses like in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
Than this, which has like a global brand behind it, and they pre-taped. They had time to make it better, and you think by sort of like going back to like those creepy, quote unquote creepy sort of Wyatt flash cuts and whatnot that's supposed to do anything, but all it does is one, take me out of the moment by saying this is really badly produced, but two, say that's not scary. Like there's nothing frightening about anything that's going on in here. And so when you call yourself the House of Horrors, like I thought like Kane's like Jacob like see no evil character was gonna show up at one point, because that's what it looked like. It looked like a low budget WWE Studios commercial, and it was just horrible. And
it's important to note that it's not like weird, like jaded grown-ups being like, that wasn't scary. Like when you go to a horror movie and you're just like, that didn't scare me at all. Like there was literally like nothing attempting to be scary.
No.
Like there was like a haunted house where you go into like a church, into like a fellowship hall in a church, and you put your hand in a bowl of grapes that have been peeled and you're like, these are eyeballs. Like that's at least an attempt to be like, hey kids, we're going to be scary. Like this was a house. It was like a house that wasn't clean. Like that's it. Like you said. Like it's just like an unkept up house, and it wasn't even that dirty. It was just like a normal house. So it was like a really rich, detached from reality 70-year-old white man was like, what do I fear the most? Poor people. I am afraid of being a normal poor person who owns a house. Like, it was even, like, nicer than most of the places I've lived in, like, frankly.
Guys, you know what's terrifying? Living in a shithole. Like that's...
You know what's terrifying? Not being deeply privileged. Like, owning a tractor, but not having control of that tractor that you own.
I mean...
Having a cute light system with only 2 colors.
It's just not good. Like, it's... I mean, first of
all,
all,
the defining characteristic of this match is that the house was blue, and then the payoff was that he said his catchphrase and it turned the house red. That was the scariest thing that happened.
I mean, Disney does that with Christmas lights. Like, they,
I mean, it's as scary as a Disney Christmas display.
Yeah, I mean, like, okay, you have dancing lights on your house, like, or like, even then, like, that's really like sort of the level of disappointment that goes into this match. So they have this fight in the kitchen, and first of all, there's no dialogue to this. Like, at least you brought up the
just guys going, and like fake punching each other.
Yeah, like you brought up the final deletion. That at least is overacted to the point of absurdity, where like you either like it or you don't. Like you could like it and be like, this is so absurd, I can't help in its over the topness that it engaged me. Or you could say that just wasn't for me. Like there's really no middle ground there, but at least it tried to do something different. This is literally, like 15 minutes of just grunts, and there's no dialogue. There's no attempt at like a story or threats or taunts or anything. I think like Bray Wyatt like maybe just throws out a line like, you took everything from me. And that's like it. Like that's it. The rest is just It's like playing a video game where like an 8-bit NES wrestling game where that's all you have is just the grunts. And and the thing about it was, so you watch this and it proceeds, and Bray Wyatt throws a refrigerator on Randy Orton. Okay. And which, by the way, WWE has been going really heavy on the attempted murder the past few weeks.
They have.
So he throws this refrigerator.
What's funny about the fridge?
Yeah.
What's funny about the fridge drop, like, not to interrupt, the funniest thing about the fridge drop, and I wrote this, is the fact that he drops the fridge on him, and I'm making air quotes and you can't see them, but he tips the fridge over, which is the horror. Like, you know, in all the Hellraiser movies, the scariest moment's always when Pinhead tips the fridge over on someone. Freddy's always like, bitch, I'm going to drop the fridge on you. But the fridge falls, and then the fridge is, like, flat to the ground. So there's not like a 6'6", 260-pound man under it, clearly. It's just flat. So either the fight is happening in Toontown and is completely flat in Grand York, or he somehow ended up inside of the fridge when they dropped it on him like he's Buster Keaton. And he's just going, ugh. And then Bray Wyatt takes like 5 minutes to crawl out of his own house because the fridge is the death blow.
And then he goes outside. And I was waiting for something to happen. Right. You know, they built to that moment, which wasn't really that solid a build, but they built this moment. And as they're building, he goes outside and he drops to his knees. And I was like, are they going to blow this house up?
They should have burned it or something. Wasn't that the imagery? Like, shouldn't he have burned the house with Orton in it?
It would have made sense considering the story continuation. But instead, he just changes the lights. Like, they just flip the switch and the lights change. And then he gets in a limo to go back to the arena. And all I could think to myself was, we have part 2 still to go. Like, we suffered through this, and that was only half of it. Why are they doing? What did I do to them? Like, why are they doing this to us? And beyond that, you know, you have this house in the middle of like San Jose. I don't even know why the match was going to go back to the arena. Like, shouldn't the neighbors have just called the cops on them? And like, that's the end of it. Like, it's just Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton get arrested and then like it's over.
Or they could have just had a referee there and pre-taped the whole match and done the gender attack and done the Bollywood Boys attack like in this house and just had it be its own thing, like a little mini movie. Because the value of having Orton and Wyatt show up in the arena after the crowd has watched 15 minutes where they're just ruthlessly booing like the crappiest wrestling they've ever seen on a video. Like, what's the point of that? And not to, again, jump too far ahead, but I'd like to say that there's a house in the middle of San Jose in pitch black that's haunted, but not really. All of the things that we've said, the single worst aspect of this entire match is the beginning of part 2, in which Bray Wyatt, the man who has been teleporting from place to place for like 4 years now, right? Bray Wyatt, the one character who we've established, I guess, with The Undertaker, has teleportation abilities, right? Bray Wyatt gets into Randy Orton's rented limousine, tells the driver to drive to San Jose. We don't get The Undertaker being like, where to, Stephanie, even. But, like, he's like, hey, man, drive me back to the arena. So my Bray Wyatt's kind of Matthew McConaughey and Dazed and Confused. So Bray Wyatt, the teleporter, has to drive all the way back to the arena, get out of the car. We see him walk through the backstage arena. Then he makes his full pro wrestling entrance, walking all the way to the ring. And when the lights come on, Randy Orton, the man who cannot teleport and had to rent a limo to get to this location, has teleported despite being stuck under a fridge in a haunted house.
Yeah.
Because there's no way for them to both get there at the same time. Like, they're just like, nobody's going to care.
Yeah, and shout out to Neil's Workbox backstage, by the way, which got amazing screen time. Best part of the match is Neil's Workbox. But
there's so much work in that box. Yeah. Like, that box is really big, and Neil worked so hard that he filled that entire box with work.
And at that point, that's all. You just wanted something to grab hold to. That's it. You just wanted something. Bray Wyatt takes his long stroll. They have this long, just establishing shot of him walking back to the arena. And the only thing you could take out of that moment is, man, who's this guy Neil? And what's he doing backstage? That's how horrible the match is that you don't care what comes next. Your questions are about Neil and his box of work. That's all
I'm hoping that it's Titus O'Neil, and that's where he keeps all of the work that he's done on the Titus brand, and that like Apollo Crews was just like taking a nap inside the box. That's what I'm hoping.
Here to me was the worst part of the House of Horrors match. I mean, you laid out plenty valid arguments for the worst part of the match, and
half an hour of it, yeah.
And every one seems to be worse than the one before.
Right.
What I found to be really awful about this thing is that Seth Rollins versus Samoa Joe was the intermission for the House of Horrors match.
That was really bad.
I mean, they took this match and stuck it right in the middle, like between the pre-tape and then what was happening in the arena. And I felt horrible for Rollins and Samoa Joe because how they were going to be able to recover from the first half of the House of Horrors match was just, I could not fathom. I could not wrap my head around how they could possibly win this crowd back because the life was just sucked out of everything and everybody. Mm-hmm. The life was sucked out of the arena. The life was sucked out of my couch. Like the life, like this match is happening, and all I could think about was, oh my God, part 2 is still coming. Like, oh, they're gonna make us watch more. And everything that was happening with Rollins and Joe, I could not care less about because I was dreading what was happening next. And what I had just seen, I could not unsee the first half of the House of Horrors. And it was like, it wasn't even that I hate watched it. It's like they hate watched me. They made me watch this thing and hate it. And then they were like, and now how about some wrestling that we would like you to care about?
Yeah, and the second half of the House of Horrors match had nothing to do with the first half. That was also incredibly insulting. It's like they just started over. It was just like, you watch that House of Horrors thing, and now here they are having a hardcore match that ends with Jinder Mahal. Like, it had nothing to do with the story. It had nothing to do with the build. It was just like SmackDown acknowledging that Bray Wyatt no longer had anything to do with the story, and that everything that you had just seen was a waste of time. Which I'm thinking is maybe the point, is that when they originally booked the House of Horrors, they were like, okay, we got to make up for that bug ring at WrestleMania, which is like the dorkiest thing that anyone's ever seen in their life. And we've got to do something really cool with the horror imagery. And then they were like, hey, SmackDown writers, guess what? Bray Wyatt's not on your show anymore. So the SmackDown writers are just like, F it. Like, we don't care. They just fight, and then Jinder Mahal shows up. Like, I feel like that's what happened, is that the SmackDown writers who were in charge of that match, presumably, either shit the bed and didn't care, or the Raw writers got put in charge of the House of Horrors and hadn't been watching SmackDown and were just like, what does Bray Wyatt do? Nothing? And then he loses? Okay. House of Horrors. It's a poor person's house, and then they get to the arena somehow, and whatever, Jinder Mahal shows up. Who knows? Jinder Mahal's still on our show, right? No? Okay, well, Jinder Mahal shows up. Who cares? And that was it. Like, they just didn't care because it wasn't their match. It wasn't SmackDown's match. It wasn't Raw's match, and nothing that happened had anything to do with the other. Like, if the WWE champion loses, it doesn't matter because it's non-title. If Bray Wyatt wins, it doesn't matter because he didn't win on his own, and he's not going to be feuding with Randy Orton after Sunday. So who cares? Like, that was the whole match, and it took forever, and it was 2 giant long segments, and Seth Rollins and Samoa Joe got the, like, WrestleMania 20 to 29, like, Divas death slot between the match in the middle of the show and the main event.
Yeah, they were like the 8-woman Divas tag, where we just
they were the Playboy Bunny pillow fight. Yeah,
which is terrible considering who's involved in that match.
Right, it should have been a really good match. And to bring it back to you, like as I mentioned, I was at Unforgiven '99, which is a show full of good wrestling that is marred by the fact that Kennel from Hell happened on it. And I was live for this, and I watched Jeff Jarrett and Chyna in like a singles match for the IC title that was shockingly good. And I watched, I believe that was when the Dudleys had their first like pay-per-view match. And there was like an Ivory Luna Vachon match, like a hardcore match. It was super short, but it was kind of fun. And then Al Snow and the Boss Man showed up in Kennel from Hell. And for anyone listening who's maybe not seen this, it was a Hell in a Cell match with a second cage inside of it, and between the two cages were supposed to be rabid dogs that were going to rip you apart. And this whole feud was based around Big Boss Man beating Al Snow, his pet, which, God, there's not enough time to explain it. But there was, the idea was that two cages, and in between them were a bunch of animals that would kill you if you touched them. And what actually happened was Al Snow and Big Boss Man had the worst match you've ever seen, unrelated to the fact that there were some Rottweilers on leashes around the ring who wouldn't stop humping each other and pooping everywhere. So this entire match, you're like, well, this match sucks, but also I'm watching dogs have sex and everything smells like piss. Like, the whole arena smelled like piss and shit because it was just dogs going crazy on each other. Like, it was like a dog orgy while Al Snow wrestled. Like, it's a nightmare. And
back in the day when things were amazing.
But after that, there were two matches. There was X-Pac versus Chris Jericho and a six-pack challenge that had Triple H and The Rock and Mankind in it. Like, should have been dope, right? But the whole time we just smelled like piss. And we were just like, hey, remember when we just watched those dogs do it? Like, and there's still like poop on the ground while like Mankind and The Rock are wrestling. Like, isn't that weird that we paid money to watch dogs have sex? Isn't that weird? And I feel like that was the crowd's reaction to House of Horrors. It was like, so we just watched all of these good matches, and isn't it weird how we just watched some dudes like dry hump in a haunted house for 30 minutes? This whole show smells like piss now. That's the House of Horrors.
Yeah, that's pretty much how you could possibly sum it up. And you know what? And the weird part about it is the match doesn't end that badly.
Jinder Mahal doing the worst belt shots you've ever seen. We're just like, I'm going to touch you in the shoulder because I don't want to hurt you because I don't want to ruin my push.
I mean,
because you're Randy Orton and you're like notoriously like
fragile.
Really emotionally valid. Yeah, you're like super fragile. So like, if I touch you in the shoulder, like, please don't be hurt and ruin my push.
Except, like, you know, and to contradict my previous sentence, now that I think about it more, you know, this guy just got a refrigerator dropped on him. He was thrown through like lamps and into like, you know, dirty walls and a belt shot. That's the nail in the coffin. Really?
Belt shot in the shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, really? I mean, the lights changed color on him. Like, that would have been devastating to anyone else. But the belt shot, that's what puts it away. And now look, I have talked at length on this podcast about how I am in favor of rebuilding the value of Jinder Mahal. I like the rise of Jinder Mahal. I like putting Jinder Mahal in the main event. I like them trying to rehab Jinder Mahal and make something of him, because that's what SmackDown does. They break the toy. They fix the toys that Raw breaks. I found from the end,
unless you're American Alpha.
Unless you're American Alpha. What I found here was that the finish of this match did everything for Jinder Mahal moving forward and did absolutely nothing for Bray Wyatt. And he's the guy that won the match.
Well, how much did it do for Jinder Mahal? Because he's supposed to be the number one contender to the WWE Championship. And it took, let me list them off, it took Bray Wyatt, who's supposed to be the eater of worlds, attacking this man in a haunted house for like 30 minutes with weapons and dirty walls and dropping a fridge on him. And it took two henchmen in the Bollywood Boys who were immediately dispatched by this man who had just been fridge murdered. And it took a sneak attack. And it took two belt shots. And Bray Wyatt hitting his finish on Randy Orton for him to win. Is Jinder Mahal going to have any of this in his one-on-one match with Randy Orton?
I mean, I hope he doesn't have.
I
hope he doesn't have another House of Horrors. Like,
Jinder can't win unless he's got all of these things. Like, all of those things plus one belt shot wasn't going to be enough.
I mean, maybe the ghost tractor runs him over. I don't know. But the thing coming out of it, and you could feel it though in the arena. Like, when Jinder Mahal came out, was like he got some heat from that moment. And I think that's something that they needed to do to at least make Jinder Mahal credible and legitimate. Like, he's. You know,
okay, like, man. If you think that's what makes incredible,
I mean, I mean, it is. I mean, look, he's going to be in this main event, and he's there regardless. So at least you got to give him some heat going in. Like, this can't be like when they decided, hey, we need a guy to wrestle for the title. Who's around? Oh, look, Jack Swagger, who we haven't seen in 8 months. Pull him on in here. Like, at least they're trying to do something with Jinder Mahal. I would hope. I think I'm giving SmackDown some leeway to do it. Granted, this happened on a Raw show, so it's not exactly perfect. Right. And the Bollywood boys like got tossed like rag dolls. Like, I was like, what is that guy, 5'3" and weigh 85 pounds? Yeah, after a fridge murder. And a man who had to, like, I guess, walk all the way from, like, Missouri to San Jose in, like, 20 minutes to get to the arena. Like, what did Orton do to get there? Like, how did he survive the fridge? Was it, like, a fake Randy Orton at the House of Horrors? Does Randy Orton have, like, a brother Eric Orton who was there with, like, the double? Like, how does any of this make sense? Like, I don't know. None of it makes sense. Like, not any of it makes. But you can, as we can argue about Jinder Mahal, but I think we could agree that Bray Wyatt gets the worst of the whole thing. Like, there is nothing out of any of this where you go, oh, Bray Wyatt won. Good job. Instead, you're you're almost confused that Bray Wyatt won because it feels like he still lost. Here's the ultimate thing that I can say about this match, and at some point we're going to have to talk about the rest of the show. But here's what I can say most about the House of Horrors match. And I've said that it's maybe the worst wrestling match that I've ever seen, and it might be. But here's the thing. We have been talking about why this match doesn't make sense for about 30 minutes. Yeah. And we have not explained everything about this match that doesn't make sense. Like, that's how bad it is that we can devote twice the length of this match to talking about all of the things that are wrong with the match. And we're not even, like, going off on tangents. Like, we are specifically like, oh, and then also this awful thing about it, and then also this awful thing about it. There are so many garbage-ass things about this garbage-ass wrestling match. Like, it's one of the worst things I've ever seen, and everyone involved should be ashamed of themselves. It's absolutely terrible. I feel absolutely inexcusably terrible. I feel like I could launch a spin-off podcast where we just talked about this match every week. And every week we would find something else like that. I should set up a Patreon account, and that will be the bonus. Is just we'll hit you with bonus House of Horrors just criticism. Because there's not enough time in the world, I don't think, to really get into everything. Like, we needed to have Roger Ebert doing like a shot by shot analysis at like a college campus of the House of Horrors and be like, hey guys, this is maybe the worst thing that like creative humans have ever made. If you want a future in this business, watch this, learn from it, and don't do anything that even remotely resembles this. Right. Yeah. Okay. Let's leave the House of Horrors alone. Let's leave the House of Horrors. Can we, or do we need to keep going? No. Let's leave. Let's get out. I think I've said my piece. I feel better. Have we turned the podcast red now? Is that the problem? In 45 minutes, I may think of something else, and who knows? There could be like bonus content that comes up. But for right now, I feel good that I've at least gotten most of it out and aired my grievances. Do you think it's really funny that Randy Orton didn't wear a shirt but felt like he needed to wear like full length pants? Like, I want to know what the rationale there is. And he had elbow pads, I believe. Right. He's like, I really don't want to get my legs dirty in this house, but my torso is fine. Yeah. Like, what? Hey, I don't know what the condition of this house is, but I would prefer to not get any splinters. I wish he had just worn a Halloween costume to it. I wish he had just shown up dressed like Captain America. It's just the House of Horrors, I believe, and this will be my final point on this. Okay. I feel like it is describing the terror that we endured by just watching it. I don't think... Here's the challenge. We talked for 30 plus minutes about that match. Now let's try to talk for 30 plus minutes about Enzo Amore and Big Cass defeating the club on the pre-show. Let's try to come up with anything other than that's still happening and then moving on. You know what? Let's go from this match though. Let's go to the main event. Let's go to sure. Let's go to the other attempted murder that the WWE has on its record. in recent weeks, and that is the main event: Braun Strowman versus Roman Reigns. Now, one thing that I did notice in watching this match, and it's funny when we sort of talk about the direction of like the WWE and then maybe like NXT and developmental. When you watch like an NXT takeover, the title matches all finish the card. They line them up. So if you go to like Takeover Orlando, it was, the tag match, the women's match, then the NXT championship. For Raw, they take those titles and they stick them in the front of the card to open up the show. And then they have Braun Strowman versus Roman Reigns to end it. So when people go, how come the belts don't feel important anymore? Maybe you start there. But with Braun Strowman versus Roman Reigns, how this match even went off, I have no idea. Roman Reigns should have been storyline dead like 3 weeks ago. So the fact that he is back and actually fighting in a match against Braun Strowman, to me, says a lot about the Roman Reigns problem that the WWE has, but they don't want to acknowledge it. In going into this, it was hard to watch this because you wanted to hope that they would do the right thing, okay, by going with Braun Strowman, because he basically almost killed the guy. Like, and how are they going to top it here? Like, he flips the arena on Roman Reigns? I don't know. But in the back of your head, it just sort of sat there and lingered that Roman Reigns is going to hit a Superman punch and he's going to win this match, even though he's probably got like a punctured lung, and he's gonna move on as if nothing ever happened.
Right. I was very scared that was going to happen on Raw before we even got to the pay-per-view. So I talked a lot of shit about the show already, right? So I want to make sure before I go into a little more detail or criticism that I've really liked the main event. I thought, just if you take it in a vacuum and you don't worry about the Roman Reigns problem, I thought it was a lot of fun. I think these guys have a lot of chemistry together. I think that they're both believable as like ass kickers because they're both like big dudes who are fast, and what they do has impact. And Roman isn't great at long-term selling, but like momentary to moment selling, he's great. Like, he can't maintain dino damage, but he can take it, and it's great. He kind of needs to learn from Sheamus, because Sheamus is the greatest at like long-term damage selling because his body turns like pink like chicken, like raw chicken. And I know Roman doesn't have that going for him, but I think Roman in that moment is great. So I thought that it was a little much that Roman Reigns showed up with a separated shoulder and multiple cracked ribs and wrestled for 12 minutes against the biggest, toughest, strongest man in the world and almost won. And I think it's a little much that after the match, they did that post-match attack where Braun Strowman ran through an ambulance door and then hit a wall of empty cardboard boxes and was just as hurt as Roman. That was a little much. But I think that the value of Roman as a talking point, I guess, is similar to Cena, where Cena figured out at some point that instead of actually being the unstoppable, never losing guy, he could be the unstoppable losing guy in name only, and we would always be shocked if he lost. Like, Cena could lose 15 times in a row now, and every time you'd be like, oh my god, Cena lost. Like, it's so ingrained in us, which is why that Brock Lesnar title match at SummerSlam was so memorable, is because it was the only time that our expectations had just been completely shut out, and the dude just got his ass kicked, and that was the match. So I think by having Roman show up with all of the odds ever against him, we were still picking Roman to win. And I think that's crazy, but it's also true. Like, it's valid. Like, our expectations are set up that they are going to disappoint us. And if you take away the nitpicky stuff of like, Roman shouldn't have gotten so much offense, Roman should be kayfabe dead, Roman shouldn't have gotten revenge on Strowman immediately, like, the actual existence of that match is that Braun Strowman pinned Roman Reigns clean. And that's awesome.
Yeah, so, I'm right there with you on that. You have to
take it for what it is, kind of. It isn't perfect in like every Jackie Chan movie has that one segment where Jackie Chan gets his ass kicked. Because if he's not vulnerable, you don't buy him struggling in the main event, quote unquote, where he has to beat up 600 guys at once, right? So I think that's Roman, is that if they learn to give him some true vulnerability, which they did for the first time, honestly, with the ambulance flip. Like, Roman didn't get out of the ambulance and kick the dude's ass, which you thought he was going to do. So they gave him a few weeks. And I guess in wrestling terms, we can't hold injury time recovery, because Hulk Hogan showed up at WrestleMania 2 with some cracked ribs and beat a 400-pound guy in a steel cage. Like, it just happens. It's fine. I think that the good outweighed the bad here. And if they don't do a follow-up match on a more important pay-per-view where Roman just beats him clean, aka the Triple H, I think it'll be worthwhile.
Yeah, you know what? I think you make an excellent point. And I've spoken at length about this in terms of the Roman Reigns problem and the John Cena problem as well, which is not giving these guys vulnerability. Having them be decimated and then show up the next week as if like nothing ever happened.
Cena's the worst ever at it. He wouldn't even pretend that it hurt him. He'd just be like, "Hey guys, I'm telling jokes."
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm in a great mood. And I had that problem with Roman Reigns too, which is that he always feels too cool for school. Like nothing ever bothers him. He's not angry about anything. He's not mad about anything. He's not hurt by anything. And I think that's a problem because in order for your hero to achieve greatness, they need to suffer. They need to hurt along the way, and you need to feel and identify with that. And I think that they've taken that away from those two guys over time, and it's hurt their long-term value. I think that's why you have such a divisive crowd. And it's not, smart marks are one thing, just trying to like go against the grain. But I think that you could win some of those people over if you had a good storytelling behind it. If you had a hero that travels sort of the hero's journey. The match here itself, I thought was fine. I was entertained by it. I think Braun Strowman has made leaps and bounds in a short period of time. And they have booked him masterfully. I don't know what it is about heels that they seem to get that they can't really necessarily put together with their baby faces. But I think as badly as they've sort of botched Roman Reigns over time, they have swung the pendulum the other way with how well they've booked Braun Strowman. And I like the fact that he gets a clean win. I think he rightfully wins this match. I'm even with the post-match attack, and paying more of a price for Roman Reigns, even though, after flipping an ambulance, like I said, I don't know where it is that you go, like an attack with steel steps. It seems like a drop in the bucket. After you flipped an ambulance with a guy in it.
Because they're gonna do it. They're gonna do a steps match at Extreme Rules. Remember when Eric Rowan and Big Show had a stairs match? They're just gonna do that. That's what they're doing.
But look, but one point, and then you can pick from there is then after that though. Okay, after I'm riding with this whole thing, they went right back to the vulnerability problem. Because after Roman Reigns, who's now coughing up blood and kayfabe would have internal injuries, gets up and walks out on his own power. And
I didn't hate that, but I hated the fact that he then hurt Strowman just as much as he was hurt by making him run into a door and then run into some boxes.
Well, and then he hit him. Yeah, he hits him with the other door like a couple times, and then like Braun Strowman runs away. But the fact that he was still in that position to be able to fight back, even in the littlest bit, just sort of sent me away from the show like the wrong way. Like I was like, for all the good you just did, I feel like you undid it in just a few seconds by not letting this guy just be hurt. Like he got demolished. Let him be demolished. In the long term, he'll be better for it.
Well, it's that thing where Cena would like lose to Kevin Owens and then there would be a rematch booked before the pay-per-view was over, I think that's part of what you're saying. And I don't want to be that guy at a record store who like approaches you and it's just like, hey, I'm going to tell you about the history of music, because that's the worst thing ever. But I don't know if you've been paying attention to America lately, but we don't really do a good job at learning from our past mistakes. So the problem, I think, with the WWE, and I'm sorry if this comes across pretentious or know-it-all, because I don't know it all. I'm a moron, and I'm concussed, so I don't know what I'm saying. But back in the territory days, the thing that we consider good wrestling as smart marks, quote unquote, is Hero's Journey and Vulnerable Heroes and King's Road and all that stuff, right? Like, it's the reason we like New Japan, and it's the reason we like old NWA stuff and classic Ric Flair, blah, blah, blah. That catered to passionate fans, and passionate wrestling fans generally were the adults who, I don't want to say thought it was real, but either thought it was real or accepted the reality of it enough to play along, right? So it was sort of to like adults who were willing to play along. And that's where a lot of the NWA stuff comes from. And that's where a lot of like the early 90s WCW stuff comes from like the Flair Steamboat feud in 89 to like the Flair Funk feud and Sting Flair, everything basically up until Hogan showed up. It's for a slightly older audience, which is why there was a lot of blood, a lot of violence, a lot of like betrayal, a lot of explanation for why things were happening. Like if the Four Horsemen attacked Dusty Rhodes in a parking lot, they would explain why the cameraman was there. They would say the cameraman's here because the Four Horsemen are arrogant and want to show people them hurting Dusty Rhodes, right? Because it wasn't for smart people, it was just for adults who were playing along. Okay, I don't want to like make it sound like smart people like this and stupid people like the other thing. The WWF in the 70s and 80s were, even then, very like kid and lowest common denominator oriented. They were the ones who were like, this guy's the hero because he loves America, and this guy's the bad guy because he hates America, right? Like they were like, everybody is a cartoon character, and it's super easy for like just the stupidest idiots to follow along with, right? They were like, this guy's black, so he's a dog. You know, like that was the WWF. They'd be like, Tony Atlas is actually from Africa, so he's Saba Simba. You know, like they'd be like, Tito Santana is from Mexico, so he's a matador. You know, like they would just be like, whatever. Here's some stupid stuff that you like. Whatever, you're stupid. Which is why we got cartoons from them. Which is why we got ice cream bars from them. Which is why we got Goonies music videos from them. Like they were for a younger audience. And they were for a more impressionable audience, I think, and for a northern audience, which is very, very different from the South. Northern audiences tend to be interested in what's going on, but they're also very like aligned with like specific, like, I don't want to say racial biases, but like regional biases. Whereas the South was just like, I want to see a guy get his ass kicked. They'd be like, I want to see a good guy win. You know, like it was very like simplified. So the WWF's always been a babyface on top promotion. They've always succeeded the most when the babyface was the champion. Hulk Hogan, Bruno Sammartino, Bob Backlund, Bret Hart, you know, Steve Austin, The Rock, John Cena, everybody, like Roman Reigns. Like they've always been a babyface on top promotion. And when we ask the babyface on top promotion to be like a heel on top promotion, like the NWA with Ric Flair, we're asking them to do a thing that they don't know how to do. So whenever the WWF books themselves as a heel on top promotion, they screw up because they don't know how to do it because it's not their audience and it's not what Vince McMahon has spent his entire life doing. So I feel like when we get frustrated at John Cena and we think it's a problem, and we get frustrated at Roman Reigns and we think it's a problem, it's because it's not our demographic. And that sucks for us because we want wrestling to be more than just one thing. And the WWE is such a globalized company, they just want wrestling to be one thing, and it's the one thing that they do well, which is, kids, look at this superhero. This superhero beats up all the bad guys, and nothing hurts him, and life is okay, and you're all special.
See, but
whereas the NWA was like, the Road Warriors betrayed Dusty Rhodes and stabbed him in the eyeball with a spike. Like, that's the difference. And like, I grew up on that. So like, I desperately want wrestling to be like, yo, I want Sheamus and Cesaro to beat the Hardys' asses and bloody them. And it's like, that comes from me wanting like pathos and drama and like wanting like danger. And the WWE is about safety and about like, it's all going to be okay. And I think that's the major difference. And I think that's where grown-ups who were trying to stay in this get so messed up, is because it's not for us, and it's so frustrating.
Well, you know,
I don't know.
I mean, I think you make a good idea because a good point, because when they did do a heel on top for an extended period of time, hence the Triple H years, it was very repetitive. and dull, and watching some guy come out for 20 minutes and say the same thing 8 different ways.
The authority, they're still doing it. Yeah,
it's not. It's just the same thing. Like, they don't really know how to break the cycle. They just know how to sort of just run the thing into the ground. I would disagree with you as far as the babyface on top thing, though, is that when they have had babyfaces on top who are able to sort of be knocked down a peg, that I think is good storytelling. I think in that respect, they know how to tell that story. I think they've just forgotten.
Well, when have they done that? Like, when have they had a babyface on top who can take punishment who hasn't immediately lost the title? Because you have guys like Chris Benoit, obviously, who won the title, or Eddie Guerrero, and they immediately lost their belts to heels.
Well, I mean, even
look at the major champions. Like, Bruno Sammartino didn't lose for like a decade.
Well, no, but
Bob Backlund was a champion for like 3 years, and Hulk Hogan defined babyface as not being vulnerable.
Yeah, but
and then they moved right into what, like Bret Hart? And
I would disagree. Well, I would disagree with you on the Hogan point, though, and even the Sammartino point, though, because
tell me Hogan was vulnerable.
I will disagree with you on that point because I think it wasn't a matter of them actually losing, but you being led to believe that it could happen. Was there
ever a chance other than maybe the Ultimate Warrior where you believed Hulk Hogan would lose? The dude would literally no-sell everyone's finisher.
Yeah, he would Hulk up, but leading up to that point, okay, and look, it was a great gimmick and it worked, and that was the way that those matches for everything that people want to knock about Hulk Hogan, like in ring, the dude he got the theatrics of it. Which is have this guy get his ass kicked for a while, okay, to the point where you think maybe this isn't going to happen. And then he would turn it up and the formula would kick in. But
that's for kids, though. Like, kids would think that. Like, no grown-up who was watching a Hulk Hogan match was like, uh-oh, Hogan's going to lose. Like, you were just waiting for that moment when Hogan's going to come back, because he did it every single time. It wasn't a mystery unless you were 5.
I don't know that, though, because like, I grew up on Hulkamania. You grew up on like Hulkamania. So
I grew up on the NWA, brother. I hated Hulk Hogan as a kid.
But it was our generation, our age demographic that sort of grew up on that. And now we are the people who have gotten older who look at it and say, "Well, I've seen that before, and I don't believe in it anymore." Like, it's almost like, right. like Santa Claus is like, people told us like, "Hey, by the way, that Santa Claus guy," and we're like, what? And now we're just cynical about all wrestling. But you brought up WrestleMania 2, like going in. Like, I remember being a kid with WrestleMania 2 and watching that, and seeing the Magnificent Morocco and King Kong Bundy attack Hulk Hogan on Saturday night's main event, right. and avalanche after avalanche and big splash after big splash, and then Hulk Hogan went away for a little while before WrestleMania, and you wondered what was the damage, what were the effects, and you had Mean Gene Okerlund overselling the fact that could Hulk Hogan overcome the odds. So going into that, even though in the back of your mind you were still rooting for Hulk Hogan, they had at least laid the foundation for him to be vulnerable. Ricky Steamboat and the Macho Man, with the broken larynx.
Macho and Steamboat.
But even still, like Ricky Steamboat taking ring bells to the larynx and being out for a time, and when he comes back, is this their heroes were set up where they were knocked down. Here you have just sort of Superman flying, where like there is like, even if somebody brings out kryptonite, Superman's like, ha, whatever, and like he just
let me jump in here for a second if I can. I would say 2 things, and let me get through these and get your opinion on them. First of all, the things you're describing are when you watched as a kid, so your perspective on them was from a kid's perspective.
Fair enough.
So if you were watching wrestling now from a kid's perspective, how different would it be? Right. So, and the other thing, and to tie this back, is yes, that's how they did that. But back then, the business model was different, so that you had more time to tell this story because you were touring and your money was mostly on the touring, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, but now they do the same thing. The hero is hurt. Roman Reigns did miss, 2 weeks of Raw because he had these injuries, and you're wondering, oh no, how is Roman Reigns? And the only difference is that instead of it being like a 4-month period before the next big show, it was a 1-month period, so it's all just truncated.
Yeah, and that's a fair point.
It's also for an audience that has a shorter attention span. So you're dealing with modern, like everything at my fingertips audience on a shorter scale. You're telling the same stories that you would have bought as a kid for kids now. And we don't get it because we're not kids now. And maybe we had an attention span and maybe we believed in Hulkamania. But I mean, as a kid, I thought Hulk Hogan made wrestling super fake. Like, you're telling me how you felt as a kid watching the WWF. When I was a kid watching the NWA, like, I thought Hogan was a joke. I was like, why does he not have damage now? How can he just not be hurt? And I didn't buy it. And when The Undertaker showed up, I was like, a zombie? Really? Because whenever guys like Oz would show up in the WCW, I'd be like, this is stupid. Because I had grown up watching the Midnight Express and the Rock and Roll Express and Magnum TA and Tully Blanchard and Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes, and they had like human personalities. And they were also for an audience of stupid people and babies, but it was different. So like, that's what I'm getting at. Is like, now the John Cena is fine storytelling works for kids who are protected, who are like, nothing can hurt you. You're a special, perfect angel baby snowflake and no one will ever hurt you, and ADD, and on a shorter business model. So like, they like have to be catered to differently, but it's the same game. So like, Roman Reigns' injury and comeback is Hulk Hogan on a shorter scale. And I think that's where modern wrestling fans get frustrated, because we want wrestling to cater to us from birth to death. Which is why comic books are the way they are now, because people who collected comic books in the 90s got older and were like, why aren't comic books still for me? And then took over comic books and made them for them. So no young people buy comic books anymore. You know, like that's wrestling. And we want wrestling to cater to us, whereas wrestling wants to make money. And the only way WWF's ever made money is catering to kids. So they're doing what they did that made us lifelong fans to make the kids now lifelong fans for 20 years from now. And it sucks for grown-ups. And it's a stupid program from dumb people, and they wrestle in haunted houses, and it makes you feel like an idiot watching it. And every now and then they'll be like, hey, grown-ups, here's this one thing that you'll like. And we get Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens at Battleground, or we get The Shield versus the Rhodes Brothers or something. They're like, here's enough for you to keep you involved. So they know how to keep us on the chain and then cater to everyone who isn't us. And we are suckers, and I love it. Like, that's just the way it goes, I think. And I don't want to sound like I know how wrestling works, because I'm just as much of an internet goober as the rest of y'all, but like, it seems like it makes sense to me. I don't know.
No, I think you do make fair points on that. And you know,
this is really philosophical. I'm so sorry. We're supposed to be talking
hey,
about
listen, that is why this show is called Intelligent Wrestling Conversation. Okay, it's for us to actually put some mind and thought into what we're talking about, and not just rattle on about, oh, I'm really mad that Roman Reigns didn't win because I don't like him. You know, like I think this really gets at the heart of a lot of things, and I do think there is a generational divide, and yeah, maybe I am that old guy screaming at kids to get off my lawn. But
same, dude, same. I'm the same way.
But at the same time, I think that they have tweaked it for younger generations for the worse. You know, I think that there are ways to still do what has been successful for them without necessarily bending to the audience. You know, I think there's something.
I think if the WWE hadn't won, it would be.
Yeah,
the WWE won.
No, it's true.
The team won.
I mean, I think there's something to be said for conditioning the audience to your product rather than you conditioning yourself to the audience, especially if you're the only game in town, because you can do whatever you want and people will still flock to you. Like the WWE could still have a lady give birth to a hand now, and people would go, yeah, all right, and they'd still watch because they're the only game in town. Like, and, you know, as much as we'll talk on this show, you know, we'll talk about WrestleCircus later in the program, and we'll talk about Evolve, and we'll talk about Ring of Honor. As much as those programs exist, and there may be people who peel off because they go, well, I just don't want to watch the WWE anymore. They're not doing it in mass. You know, millions of people aren't going, well, I'm tuning into Evolve 84. You know, no offense to Evolve 84. I'm just, in large scale, they're not going.
It's not the same thing.
Yeah, they're going, this doesn't do it for me anymore. Where's that Zack Sabre Jr. guy I've been hearing a lot about? You know, like, that's not happening.
Diaper skeleton.
And so in that respect, I think there are ways for them to still do it. And yeah, they have tons of content to fill. The timelines are on a much smaller scale than they previously were. Like you couldn't take John Cena and put him out for 6 months, with unless it's a legitimate injury. And even then, he's probably going to
film a movie.
Yeah, and even then, he's probably going to come back in 2.5 anyway, because legitimately is a superhuman. But I think that there are ways to sort of walk that line to try and get both sides of the audience on board, rather than moving so divisively forward. Because they've done this now twice in a row. John Cena has been divisive. Roman Reigns has been divisive. Before that, their champion, their top guy wasn't always really divisive. Like, people were on the Hulkamania train. There wasn't until later when he was in WCW and like older guys were just like, I'm kind of tired of this. I
would also say on that point though, we have the internet now, so we have everyone's opinion. Because if you go back and you read like old Observer reports, like people hated Hulk Hogan on the internet, or like smarter fans hated Hulk Hogan. Like if you look through PWI, you'll occasionally get that like letter that's just like, I'm 35 and I hate this baby wrestling. Like the Ultimate Warrior can't work. Like it was always there. It's just now we have that opinion in front of us. Like constantly.
Stupid.
I think that's part of it. Like Hulk Hogan would have been divisive as hell if there had been an internet. Like my 6-year-old ass would have been on there being like, why is he taking damage? This doesn't make sense.
And we would have been like, you're broken, go away.
Right. Like I feel like the internet is a huge part of it. Like we just have to hear everyone's opinion now. It's the reason why everything's problematic and everything's divisive. It's just we all pick sides because of the internet. And I don't know. I feel like everything would have been shitty if we'd had the internet. Like we would have all been like, hey, consider this person's point. Because we had to make our own opinions back in the day. Like even in the late 90s, like which was the last boom period, like the internet was kind of coming along, but like we didn't have people being like, oh, Goldberg only wrestles 30 seconds at a time. We just were watching it. We were like, that dude kicks ass. And that was it.
Yeah, and even then, you had to like dial up to go on like a Prodigy message board to make that opinion heard.
But even then, there were Goldberg haters who were just like, he's a fake Stone Cold Steve Austin. He can't work, blah, blah, blah. So, I don't know. I think it's always been the same. We just have a different perspective on it.
It's possible. It's very possible. All right.
I hate to keep contradicting you. I apologize.
No. Hey, I am quite all right with having a different point of view than one that's just like, Billy, you're amazing, and everything you say is 100% correct. And I don't even know why I'm on this show, because basically you're saying everything that I would think, but I'm agreeing with you totally. So no, I am totally fine.
I think that's very important to know that like differences of opinion on how wrestling works and how wrestling should be perceived and how it works. Like I think that's super valuable, and I think that's something that podcasts like this really do well. Is you have to have differences of opinion, and a lot of people get really mad at me for being like, I think this about wrestling, and it's like, I'm not right. I just think it.
Yeah, I mean, that's I think the key point is that there's no right or wrong answer. There's, like you may say something and I may and I may say, well, I don't necessarily agree with that, but I see where you're coming from, and then we can have a dialogue about it, not just like, well, you're wrong, you stupid idiot. Why would you think that? Clearly, I can't have any further discussion with you because you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
The only person who should be treated like that are the people in charge of the House of Horrors, Matt.
Yeah, they are clearly wrong, but
they should be punished. They should be put in jail. Like they need to go to prison.
Yeah, yes, that was a crime, a federal crime against haunted houses of all kinds. But I think that's a valid point, and we try to encourage that here on the show to begin with, is that not everything on a wrestling card is for you either. So like just because you watch something and you don't like it doesn't mean that there's not somebody else who watched it and enjoyed it. I don't think anybody enjoyed the House of Horrors. Like if they did, I want to meet that person and like sit down.
At the same time, though, like who knows? 30 years from now, there's going to be like a 35-year-old dude on whatever the future version of a podcast is, being like, "Oh man, you know what I really loved when I was a kid? The House of Horrors match. It was so cool."
And I'm like,
I love the Chamber of Horrors match, the one where Abdullah the Butcher got put in the electric chair. I love that match, and it's terrible.
Well, it's still better than this. Like,
but with helmets,
see,
cameras.
See, and as far as we try to run away from the House of Horrors, it keeps sucking us back in. All right, there are 4 other matches. We won't do a deep dive. We won't do a deep dive on the other 4. But there were 4 other matches. Oh, strangely, like I said, all title matches. And that was Chris Jericho versus Kevin Owens for the U.S. title. We had Austin Aries versus Neville for the Cruiserweight title. The Hardy Boys versus Sheamus and Cesaro for the tag team titles. And Bayley versus Alexa Bliss for the women's title. Out of those 4 matches, did you take anything super positive away from it? Did you take anything super negative away from the 4 that opened the card? What stood out to you, I guess, from those matches that for somebody who hasn't seen Payback, you would tell them to either take note of or stay far the hell away from?
Well, I think all 4 of those matches were good. I think they were more good than bad. I had a really positive reaction to everything on the show that wasn't the Haunted House. I think that there were tiny moments that if you were paying attention, each match was really valuable. I loved the finger callback in Jericho Owens. I thought their match was exponentially better than the WrestleMania match. I loved the psychology of the hand and Jericho attacking the hand so he couldn't use it, and then that actually paying off in the finish. I thought that was brilliant. I thought Bayley losing fair and square to Alexa Bliss after cheating to keep the title for several months was a weird, nice comeuppance. Because she deserves it, man. Because nobody's worse than Raw Bayley right now. I think
it's not
that
her fault, and it's so not.
I mean, no, it's not. I mean, I hope that if anyone's listening to this, my opinions, unless I'm specifically like the people who booked this need to go to prison, that it's not the wrestler's fault. It's just the characters on the TV show that I'm watching. If I think that Game of Thrones shouldn't have had, Jaime rape Cersei on the body of their dead son, I don't think that like Lena Headley is to blame for it. I don't. But anyway, I think that was a good match that accomplished something really good, which is moving the Raw Women's title to someone who isn't from the Four Horsewomen, so that we're not just like living in the shadow of what we remember from NXT, and we actually are forced to build something new. I think that's really valuable. I think the tag match was competent. I mean, it is what it is. The Hardys are what they are right now, but I love the post-match attack. I've been dying for like a strong heel tag team of like badasses. I wish that the League of Nations had taken itself seriously for like 1 second and just realized that they were like actual big tough dudes. Should have just been beating the shit out of people instead of like, I hate America. I think Sheamus and Cesaro as heels could be brilliant, and I think it's desperately needed in the tag division. And I think all of the undercard matches on the show had value. I do. I really enjoyed it. I think Neville and Aries, I love Neville's descent into having to go deeper and deeper into his bag of tricks to keep the title. I love that the original story was that he had decided not to use the Red Arrow because it was too crowd pleasing, so he started tapping people out to the Rings of Saturn, but then he started facing tougher challenges, so he had to break out the Red Arrow even though he didn't want to. And then when he fought Aries the first time, he was going to lose, and he took a kind of a cheap shot by like attacking an injured eye. And then this time he was straight up going to lose, and he had to cheat. Like he had to actually illegally cheat and not just be opportunistic. And I love that progressive storyline. So I think that a lot of what happened on Payback was really good. And like I said, if it hadn't been decorated with feces, it would have been thought of as a really underrated pay-per-view. So I liked a lot of it, yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to agree with you on that, like, wholeheartedly. And I said it in the beginning of the show that this felt like a tale of 2 different shows, like a tale of 2 different pay-per-views. And we spent so much energy and time talking about the awfulness of it because that's what overshadowed the good stuff. The first half of this pay-per-view was really solid. And going into this pay-per-view, when we talk about expectations, I wasn't really expecting much. And I was pleasantly surprised by the first 4 matches on the card. And, and
I like the main too. And even Joe Rollins was okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, even Strowman and Reigns, I got something out of.
I really liked it, honestly.
Yeah. But I think, it's the House of Horrors that just ruins this whole thing.
Here's the interesting thing about Payback, honestly, is the fact that the Raw matches felt like SmackDown matches, and the one SmackDown match felt like a Raw match.
It's true. I mean, Look, Jericho versus Owens. I'm I'm kind of whatever on Jericho in ring at this point. I think he has like good matches, but like I never see anything great. Like the matches never elevate to great. But and this match I thought was like it was sort of the same. Like it was fine, it was okay, and then once the finger on the rope happened, like all of a sudden the match had like a storyline, like kicked into the second gear towards the end, and I thought like that was a good through line to carry the match through to the end. Aries and Neville, I'm not crazy about like bullshit disqualification finishes. I think the crowd has sort of been conditioned that countouts and DQs are cop outs at this point in time.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, but listening to the way that you sort of put it into perspective, in retrospect, I'm kind of looking at it and being like, yeah, maybe that makes sense. Yeah.
Here's the problem. There's an announce team that's supposed to explain this shit to you.
I know,
and they don't.
No, I mean, look, I think you sort of opened my eyes to the way that the Aries Neville match ended up. Where now I'm second guessing myself and saying, well, maybe that wasn't so bad. And look, and I think this was the best Austin Aries match I've seen since he signed on the dotted line. And that includes NXT and now into like 205 Live and the WWE. I think this was the best Austin Aries match. Like he was bringing it against Neville at Payback. And the crowd really seemed to respond to him for a division that nobody seems to care about right now. So I hope that is sort of a catapult to make Neville and Aries matter in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I think part of the problem with the Cruiserweight division, not to go on another thing that would take me 45 minutes, but the reason Aries is connecting, I think, is because he seems urgent. Like, he seems like he's in a fight. And I think part of what makes Neville good is that Neville is clearly, like, thinks he's above it all, but he's an incredible athlete, so he knows when to hit his spots. And I think he learned that in NXT because when Pac signed, I wasn't a big fan of Pac because he was a great athlete. He was very much Tony Nese, where he was a great athlete, but as a wrestler, like his storytelling, I thought, and I'm in a minority, but I think his storytelling kind of lacked. So when he became Adrian Neville, they sort of were like, learn when to hit your spots, don't just hit spots. And he got great at it. And he was the best NXT champion of all time.
I would agree there as well.
But
that's another discussion for another show.
Sure. But like as the king of the cruiserweights, he knows when to hit his spots and why. He's not. It's important to know whose ass it is and why it's farther. You know, to quote Idiocracy. So he knows when to hit it. Austin Aries, I didn't like Aries on the Indies either. Again, another minority opinion. But he's busting his ass clearly, and he desperately wants to win wrestling matches. So even when he's wrestling Noam Dar's like little Fred Savage looking ass, he's working hard and he like makes it look like he's in a fight. So the audience is like, I get the story. I see these people working hard. I understand why they're doing what they're doing, so I like it. Whereas like you've got a match with Tozawa and Rich Swann and all these incredible athletes, Jack Gallagher, like, and they're just doing shit and it doesn't matter. They're just like, look at what I'm doing. And nobody cares because they're not doing it for a reason. They're just doing stuff. Nobody in WWE cares about that, man. They don't. WWE audiences are there to see characters and they're there to see moments because that's what they've been conditioned to do. So if your moment doesn't matter and you don't know who the character is, they don't care. So you have to make them care. You have to be Austin Aries working his ass off and being like, I kind of snuck into commentary and got my character over for a couple of months, like under the radar. And now you care about whether I win or lose. And Neville's doing great work controlling it and telling a great story in the ring. And I think that's what you need to do. I wish the Cruiserweight division was different in style because the main event of Raw was incredibly more diverse than like both Cruiserweight matches on Raw. Because the Cruiserweight match on Raw involved a chin lock as a near fall, and a headbutt as a near fall, and a drop kick as the finish. And that's not cruiserweights. Like, it's not. So I think if you're gonna salvage anything, it should be that Neville and Aries are just lighter dudes on the Raw roster.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I mean, look, I haven't been incredibly sold on Austin Aries, especially since he's come over. You know, I watched him in TNA and I was like, well, this guy's fine. And then he came over and there was a lot of hype around him and I couldn't see it all. Like I was like, why? This was the first time I was like, okay, I get it. Like, okay. And I feel like between him and Neville, like this is a place for them to build the Cruiserweight division on. And I hope this one keeps going for a little while. Not to the point where it's like Randy Orton and John Cena for like 85 times. But enough that maybe other guys can get the rub off of the overall thing. Hardy Boys and Sheamus and Cesaro I thought was fine. I'm right with you as far as the heel turn afterwards. I want to give major props, though. You brought up the commentary team. I want to give major props. And yes, I'm going back real deep into the retrospective to bring props out in order to give them here. Booker T on commentary, selling the attack of the Hardy Boys afterwards, helped make that moment. Booker T went berserk and lost his shit over it. And, for as much as we always talk about, give the commentary team shit for like as bland as they are, whatever, Booker T went full passion on this one. Booker T talked about how this is business. He sold the heel side of it. Like, yeah, the Hardys deserve this for coming in here and getting in their face and for taking their titles. And I was in the moment. I was living it. And it was an element that's been missing from these shows for a while, which is a commentator, like JR, by God. Here you had Booker T like, oh man, this is business. I can't. And I was like, yes, this is happening. And I loved every second of that.
Yeah.
The match itself, like Jeff Hardy loses a tooth. It is what it is. And clearly we're moving towards the Hardys eventually getting broken, I would hope. But I thought this was one of those very rare cases where the commentary helped sell the moment for the viewer.
Yeah, I think a very important thing to note is how important it is for wrestling announcers to be specifically brought in to talk about something they know about. I think the reason that 205 Live's commentary kind of sucked is because Aries was trying to get his character over, but the Cruiserweight Classic commentary was great because Daniel Bryan just had an actual enthusiasm for like light heavyweight wrestling, right? And I think that in WCW, when they would bring in Mike Tenay to talk about the Cruiserweights, it felt special, and you were like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about, and he likes this style, and he understands Lucha Libre, and blah, blah, blah. And I think with Booker, I think his strength is in calling tag matches because he was a tag expert for so long. And as one of the members of Harlem Heat, shout out to anyone who reads the best and worst of Nitro, I think that Booker knows more than anyone about bullshit tag match finishes, So Booker's out there getting enthusiastic because he deeply understands tag team wrestling. And I know Booker understands wrestling, period, but tag team wrestling is kind of his niche, it's kind of his specialty. So, I think that's a real value instead of just having a talking head who's regurgitating what he's heard through a microphone. Like, I think that's why Corey Graves excels at selling the NXT guys, is because he spent so much time watching them and being one of them. And I think, instead of just bringing in Byron Saxton and having JBL scream over everything, that if you just had some like specific color commentators where you're like, okay, here's the Cruiserweight division, let's bring on, Daniel Bryan or whoever to like talk about why this matters, I think it would go a long way. And I think that you're exactly right. Like, Booker kind of lacks a lot as an announcer, from talking about how Austin Aries is a kid when he's 39 years old, or talking about how the Hardys are a nostalgia act. Like, you're not really supposed to be saying that stuff. But, like, I get it. And the enthusiasm really did work. And I think Sheamus and Cesaro really need it, because Sheamus especially, like, the audience is conditioned to turn off for Sheamus. So,
yeah, and then the other match to talk about is just Bayley and Alexa Bliss. Like, this is Bayley's hometown in San Jose, so the writing was on the wall for where this was going to happen. And I think it's interesting for Alexa Bliss to sort of get the heat for beating the hometown hero for the title. Like, that's going to help her moving forward. I think it makes for a more interesting storyline because clearly Raw Creative doesn't know what to do with Bayley. They have just completely undermined everything that made that character get to this point.
Desperately needs to go to SmackDown.
Yeah, I
desperately wish that she had been there instead of Charlotte.
I mean, like it's a good thing they got. Well, you know what though? But I mean, NXT did it twice with Sami Zayn and Bayley. I guess SmackDown could do it too, because they're basically the same character. Just one's a male and one's female. They're just the underdog, the passionate underdog that you need the crowd to rally around. Raw they botched it. Like, they just took this person up and were like, yo, everybody loves her because she's colorful. Oh, what? Oh, she's honest and trustworthy? Oh, those are traits that belong somewhere else. So
she cheats to win because she's she keeps the title even though she didn't earn it.
Yeah. It's just so bizarre. The women's division on Raw is always very strange because it just feels like a year-long round robin of watching the same people fight each other for no real reason other than that they're there. I think Alexa Bliss, I think she's regressed slightly in ring, but I think her character has progressed. So I'd like to see that sort of even out. But I think this opens up some possibilities moving forward with her as a heel champion. I would have liked Bayley to hold on to the title under different circumstances, but we don't live in that alternative reality. So as far as Alexa Bliss getting the title, I think that's the right call, and we'll see where that goes moving forward.
Yeah, at this point, I just want anything other than the Four Horsewomen, and I've gotten a lot of grief recently in Raw and pay-per-view reports from people who are just like, I think that's off base, and it's like, I do too, kind of in my heart. I love those four women because of what they did in NXT. And I think most of the love that anyone who watches them has is based on that. You know? There's nothing that Sasha Banks, other than maybe the street fight, has done on Raw to justify the hype of Sasha Banks.
And it pains me to say that,
Right. And Bayley
hurts.
is built solely on being such a singularly unique character who exists completely separate from the rest of the universe. Her existing and her struggle and battle is what made her special. And I understand that you want to keep her character moving forward. And I understand that you don't want to just start over and tell the story again for Raw because it wouldn't be the same. But having her be the opposite of what her character is, because that's what WWE babyfaces are, is such a bum rap. It's so depressing when Bayley was like, hell no, I'm not giving up my title. I was just like, that's it. I'm done. And
everyone who loved Bayley at that point, just it was like face meet palm. It was just, oh my God, this is happening. Right.
And at least with Sami Zayn, he hasn't had any success. So at least he's kind of still telling his story, he's that guy who's just like, oh, I'm kind of likable. And I mean, he's had his moments where he's been kind of a dick unnecessarily. I wish he'd leave Kevin Owens alone. But, it is what it is. It's a different story for a different audience. But Bayley is just a bummer. And Sasha's kind of a bummer, too, because Sasha can't talk. She cannot talk on a microphone. She is among the worst. And Bayley as well. And they just have them come out and cut these Roman Reigns, recapping the last 2 months of programming things, trying to get over as, likable personalities, when what they do in the ring is what makes them likable.
Yeah,
and arguably, Sasha's never been likable. She's just great as a wrestler, and the fact that she was a dope wrestler is what made us like her. And she had a big personality that showed in the ring. And when they have her coming out and rolling her eyes at the ceiling and being like, "Oh, Bayley," it's I don't want that. I don't want to see that. And Charlotte's been great. Charlotte's been a linchpin that kept the whole thing together. But even she does those long-winded promos where she forgets what she's saying and the crowd just wants her to death.
Yeah,
I think survived because she's not on Raw.
Yeah, they just the idea, and this is a lesson that Paul Heyman taught me a long time ago, which is play to the strengths and hide the weaknesses. And
right? What the opposite?
And what I have found with the women is that they have exposed the weaknesses and muddied the strengths. Bayley is an underdog.
They weirdly treat the mid card and the undercard like an NXT game show where they're just like, oh, you don't know how to cut a promo, Daniel Bryan? Go out and cut a 3-minute improv promo on nothing. It's they're specifically trying to make these people swim in deep water if they can't. Whereas they're the only game in town, and these people shouldn't have to prove themselves. They should have had to prove themselves before you sign them.
Yeah, I mean, I'll disagree with you on Sasha on the mic. I don't think she's good on the mic. Yeah, I don't think she's good on the mic as a babyface. I think if you give her the mic and just let her be,
she's good on the mic ever.
Well, down in NXT, I think when she was sort of running down Bayley and talking about how she was the boss, I could be fine with that character. I mean, granted, this is also coming from the mouth of a 100% unapologetic Sasha Banks mark. So my perspective,
too, just to say it.
So my perspective is a little skewed on that. But she's she's also not that character right now is not being true to what got her to the dance. Like that, like people don't love Sasha because of who she is right now. That's not what got
That's
Sasha
the whole
attention.
women's division.
Yeah, what got Sasha attention was like taking Izzy's headband and like throwing it.
Right.
Like that's what got her, being all this larger than life heel personality. That's what got her there. What got Bayley to the dance was being this everyman, passionate fan underdog that people could see themselves into. And they've just flipped that whole world on its head. And as much as I love these women and what they could do in the ring, the character stuff is actually making it worse.
The USA Network, characters not welcome.
With that said, Brandon, overall Payback, what was your with the House of Horrors removed? Okay, because I think we've spent plenty of time letting people know our true feelings on that. With the House of Horrors removed, how did WWE Payback overall play for you?
I thought it was great for a live special. It wasn't something that felt like a WrestleMania, but it didn't need to. It felt like almost like a Clash of Champions, where it was somewhere between a good Raw and a good pay-per-view. Because a lot of it didn't have a lot of consequence because of the superstar shakeup, like Jericho Owens or even the House of Horrors. Like there weren't really a lot of stakes because Raw is Raw and SmackDown is SmackDown now. So, it was a little empty on that regard, but I think some stuff happened. We got Alexa as champ. We got Sheamus and Cesaro as heels. Roman coughed up a bunch of blood. I mean, it was worth watching. And I think it's worth people's time. And I think even the House of Horrors is worth your time to watch because I mean it is. Well, okay.
Why are you being so mean to people?
Similar. It's very similar to Kennel from Hell, or it's very similar to the Doomsday Cage at Uncensored 96, where it's novelty. Like 10 years from now, we're gonna get together and like watch the House of Horrors and laugh about it. It's the Yeti like humping Hulk Hogan from behind at Halloween Havoc 95. It's the shock factor.
No, you don't need to. No one needs to put themselves through that. if you
not now,
I think saw it once,
3 or 4 years, and you'll be like, "Why did this exist?"
If you saw it once, that was enough. If you haven't seen it, consider this your warning.
I would like to say that WWE has officially lost their privileges to make fun of anything WCW ever did.
That's probably true. That is probably true. All right, Brandon, before I let you go ahead, get the plugs in so that everybody knows where to keep an eye out for all your stuffs.
I'm plugging. So I am the pro wrestling editor at the 3-time consecutive Thesey Award-winning With Spandex on the UPROXX network. You can check us out at withspandex.com or uproxx.com/pro wrestling. I am the pro wrestling editor there. I work with Bill Hanstock, who's a really fantastic senior sports editor. We write wrestling jokes. I do the best and worst of Raw. Not to be confused with the best and worst of Raw on IGN or the best and worst of Raw on literally every other website now. I'm the one that does it. I'm the best and worst guy. You can find that there. I'm at Twitter at Mr. Brandon Stroud, Mr. Brandon Stroud, STROUD. You can find me pretty much anywhere. If you Google me, there are only 3 of us. There's me, there's a minor league hockey player, and there's a rapper. I'm the one who's not an athlete and has no musical talent. You can also find me, hopefully, on theater screens soon. I just finished my second feature film. It's called Seven Hills City. It's about a wrestling fan growing up in a super religious town dealing with suicide and eating disorder and all sorts of really heavy stuff. Submitting that to festivals right now. If you're a wrestling fan, it's got a cameo from one of my favorite wrestlers, Vanessa Craven. She's in there. Lots of good stuff. You can find me on Amazon Prime. I made a movie called Meet Me There starring Goldust. It's a very low budget, i.e. 1/5 the budget of the Blair Witch Project horror film. You can find it for free on Amazon Prime, or you can find it on DVD. Lots of fun stuff. I'm going to be relocating to Los Angeles in the summer, so you can find me probably at more PWG shows. You can find me wandering around the streets as a homeless person in a couple of years with a laundry basket full of like rainbow colored stuff, screaming about how I used to write about wrestling on the internet for a living.
Plenty to unpack from this conversation with Mr. Brandon Stroud. Lots of perspective and lots of hate for the House of Horrors. So, Brandon, thank you very much, dude.
Bray Wyatt from the House of Horrors for Halloween this year. So if anyone would like to be my Randy Orton, I'm taking offers now.
See, and all that with a slight concussion. Job well done. We're going to put him through the protocol now, though, and make sure all this makes sense. Mr. Brandon Stroud, once again, check him out at UPROXX. And Brandon, thank you very much, dude, as always.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
And that, of course, brings us to the Tom Nix portion of the show. So here it is, once again, joining us on the This Is Infamous hotline, our resident wrestling guru and wrestling intellect extraordinaire. Does that make sense? Maybe. I don't know. Whatever. You can find him online at the Tom Nix on Twitter. Tom Nix. So, Tom, here you are.
Extraordinaire sounds like an hour or something like that. Like you just combine two jobs into one thing.
It meant to be extraordinaire, but I think extravaganza was on my mind. Considering the length of
extravaganza. That's me.
Considering the length that this podcast will now be going at full length after talking to Brandon Stroud at real length about Payback. In particular, the House of Horrors match. Look, so you're the extraordinaire for this podcast today. So look, from here into perpetuity, the extraordinaire Tom Nix. You heard it here first from a crazy person. Yeah. Make sure you get that shirt on ProWrestlingTees.com. When we make it, whenever it happens. So look, I talked about it at the beginning of the show. The plan was for us to discuss WrestleCircus at length this past weekend's WrestleCircus iPPV, and we waited. Where this segment of the show is happening right now is on slight delay from the rest of the show because we waited as long as we could to see how this would pan out. So the original plan was for us to sit down and talk about WrestleCircus. And look, I was jazzed. I was excited. I was psyched about watching WrestleCircus for the first time, for taking in my first WrestleCircus show. Primarily because, as we discussed last week, $10 to see the Space Monkey was enough for me.
Yep.
And apparently the Space Monkey is now a fan of mine because I talked so lovingly about the Space Monkey last week.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Good.
So I got that monkey love.
I'm glad there's mutual admiration happening.
Something like that.
That's what we're here for. Yeah. Monkey loving.
I'm pretty sure that's illegal in at least 32 states. But not Florida. Well, it's Florida. So all bets are off down here. I'm pretty sure they welcome that because Florida man, that guy's up to crazy shit all the time. So the plan was to get it, and look, and you rode my ass, not literally, figuratively, about watching WrestleCircus on Sunday night. You were like, why aren't you watching WrestleCircus? Why aren't you watching WrestleCircus? And in retrospect, having seen the House of Horrors, you're probably right. I probably should have watched WrestleCircus live.
Let's go ahead and remove probably.
Yeah.
Remove probably. You should have been watching live. You could have watched Payback right afterward. You could have watched it the next morning because it's on demand immediately. But you had to stay loyal to your terrible wrestling company.
Look, here's the deal. Had I not watched Payback on Sunday night, knowing how much shit was in the air from the House of Horrors, I don't know that I would have dove into it. I would not have had the motivation to press play and watch it. I'd have been like, I can't do it. And then people would have been like, how come you didn't talk about Payback on the podcast? And I would have been like, because the day after I heard all I needed to. and it would have been, journalistically, it would have been questionable. So I couldn't do that.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So I went to go. So the plan was then to blow off Monday Night Raw on Monday and watch WrestleCircus on Monday night. That was going to be my plan. So I went to the WrestleCircus website, WrestleCircus.com, and I went to the iPay-per-view section. And I went and I made a purchase because it told me that if I went and paid money, I would have 24 hours of access to the show. So I put in my money. I put in my credit card information. I made my purchase. A receipt was sent to my email. And the show was then offline and unavailable to be watched. And it has been that way every day since then. So I reached out to WrestleCircus, and look, I'm not trying to badmouth WrestleCircus. I'm trying to give them as much benefit of the doubt here as possible. But it's been several days and a couple of emails to try to correct this situation and to get my $10 back. And those requests and emails so far seem to have fallen on deaf ears, or at least on ears that have not helped me resolve this situation. So as a result, I have not been able to watch WrestleCircus, and after discussing this with you, Tom, we came to the decision that let's push this back and see what happens, because it would be quite awkward for you to discuss a full show at length and me to sit here and not know anything about what you're talking about.
Correct.
So
yeah.
So with that, look, we're gonna push. We're going to push a WrestleCircus discussion back. We're going to table this show. I'll talk about details later in the show. We're going to be off next week, taking a 1-week hiatus so I can get some vacay time in. And as a result, like, you'll have this extravaganza podcast to listen to over the course of 2 weeks. But when we come back, hopefully, with the stars aligned and the interwebs cooperate, then we will be able to talk about WrestleCircus at length next show.
Yeah, and I'm on WrestleCircus' website right now. It actually looks like it might be a little misleading because they have the IPPV section, which is the most current one, Battle at the Big Top, and that is only live. Like, if you pay for it afterward, I guess it does take your money. I guess
yes, it does.
But it's only for live streaming, and after that one event, it's not there. There's also a tab for video on demand that is where you can rewatch them, but Battle at the Big Top is not uploaded yet, which is likely why you can't watch it, because the most recent show is the Midnight After Mania show from April 3rd.
See, I thought it would have sat there just for a little bit. Maybe, just a running thing, where you could maybe just pick it up. Because yes, it is a bit misleading.
Yeah,
I was misled.
That's okay. They'll get it up, and I'm sure they'll either refund your money or just give you a free download credit because you already paid $10 to watch it. So I'm sure they'll take care of you. Al and Lexi have always been super, super good about that kind of stuff. So I'm positive you will get taken care of, even though you paid for something you don't have right now. You will get it.
I'm hopeful, because all I've heard is nothing but tremendously great things about everyone surrounding WrestleCircus, and that's why I felt a little bummed that I wasn't able to watch the show, and that we're kind of sitting in this place where I haven't been able to watch the show. So like I said, I don't want anybody to take this as I'm bad mouthing WrestleCircus. If in 2 weeks I still haven't heard anything back from on my emails and they're still sitting on my $10, that tune may change a little bit. But right now, I'm willing to cut them some slack, and we'll see where things go. So in 2 weeks when we return, hopefully we'll be talking about this past weekend's WrestleCircus show, just 3 weeks removed. So anyway, with all that now laid out for you, I didn't bring Tom on here just to explain why Tom is not on here this week.
Hey guys, bye guys, see you next week. Oh wait, not Ben either.
We do have some business in order to attend to, and that is the homework from last week. So the assignment that Tom gave to myself as well as to everyone else was to go out and seek the Progress Orlando show, the show from WrestleMania weekend, the Progress show that took place in Orlando over WrestleMania weekend, to watch the tag team match of the South Pacific Power Trip versus the team of JML, which is Shane Strickland and Sami Callihan. Is that correct, Tom?
That is correct.
Okay. So hopefully everyone was able to locate this and dive into it and watch it. I did. And I'm gonna tell you what I thought about it.
Tell me what you thought, Billy Donnelly.
I was not a fan.
Okay. Everyone just hang up. Stop listening to me. I don't make good recommendations, or actually what's probably the fact is Billy Donnelly hates wrestling.
Look, I just could not get into this match. I was into it in the very beginning. Okay, I'm gonna tell you this right out of the gate, because I believe it was South Pacific Power Trip. Okay, who came down to the ring, right, to the music of "Keep It 100" by that would be, hold on, let me find it for you. That would be by Grand Theft and Keys and Crates. I was so pumped after hearing that song that I went on iTunes and purchased it and have been listening to it ridiculously nonstop since watching this Progress Orlando match. So right out of the gate, I was kind of into it. I was like, all right. I was like, oh, this music is catchy. I like these dudes coming down in the ring. Let's see what goes on. And then
I want to point out to the audience that Billy Donnelly does not like this match. However, he does like a song whose only lyrics are the words 100 repeated to infinity.
Keep it 100. Keep it 100.
Those are the only lyrics in the song.
I mean,
but this wrestling match didn't do it for him because he's a discerning.
I mean, look, if we weren't at risk for me having to pay licensing fees to air even a portion of the song, I would totally drop it right now. I would drop it right now, and we'd play it, and it's only like 3.5 minutes. So once it was over, I would probably just play it again. But so right out of the gate, like, I was kind of interested, and look, and here's also the deal. So I was not a Sami Callihan fan when he was in NXT as Solomon Crow. And that is not necessarily...
I would say many people agree with you on that.
People agree with you. And that's not necessarily his fault. I thought it was just a bad, it was a bad character who had not a good foundation built under him, and I don't think that he really did much to then flip it and make the most of it. And now he's not there anymore. But so I was curious to see the Sami Callihan post NXT, the guy who's now trying to make a name for himself and sort of carve his own path out on the indies and everywhere else. So I was interested to see sort of where Sami Callihan went from where we had seen him most publicly last. And look, and you talked a big deal about South Pacific Power Trip last week, so I was curious to see how this tag team operated as well. But after Keep It 100 stopped, it all fell apart for me, because right out of the gate, like, the madness of this match just happened. I think there was a corkscrew moonsault like 5 minutes into the match. So, and from there, it just sort of kept deteriorating. And look, and you were there live, okay? So it may have, like, we talked differently about how sometimes live matches and TV matches don't necessarily follow the same path. You can get a totally different experience from one than you can out of the other. But Correct. What I found watching it, particularly the broadcast, was there was so much going on in the arena between sort of the team splitting and fighting on a solo level that the broadcast could not even keep up with it. So it was like watching a Michael Bay film where it's just sensory overload, and you're like, I don't really know what I'm watching. I don't know what I'm looking at.
And that's fair, because again, I'm going off my memory of the match. Yes. I have not watched the Flow Slam version. And you are very, 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 very right that being there live and taking the entire thing in is you are able to focus on what you want to focus on, where when you're watching on television, you're pretty much at the mercy of whatever the director or cameraman is showing you at the moment. And when things get really chaotic, it's hard to know where to put the camera. Where yes. Live, you are your own camera, so you can focus on whatever the hell you want.
Now, look, along the way, I mean, look, I hate the powerbomb superplex combo spot. I think it should be retired at this point, or at least like put on a really long cruise for a while and like it can come back at some point. But it's been like done to death. I will say though, seeing a powerbomb superplex combo out of a tree of woe, that was pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. Like I popped for that one when I saw it. I was like, oh, well, that's different. So there was that. But look, now as the match goes on, we start to go into the Billy Donnelly danger areas, which is no selling, way too much no selling. So there was an exchange in the middle of the ring between TK Cooper and Shane Strickland where they are just no selling strikes and blows. I mean, they are hammering each other, and there is no effect because the other guy just comes back and hammers them right back. And we're talking forearm strikes and elbows and knees and kicks, and none of them have any effect. So it starts to, the match itself wasn't on solid ground with me at that point as it was. But once we started getting there, and then the end is, as we move towards even further towards the end of the match, like it was just almost too overbooked. Like just too many, like let's get all these spots in, just too many spots at one time to try and get the creative juices of the wrestlers going. But I think as far as an execution, it just felt like it didn't feel realistic. It didn't feel like a fight. It felt like a dance, and which is fine for people. We've talked about this. It's fine for other people, but for me, too choreographed for me to really get into.
So let's talk about Sami Callihan, because I want to see, like, I'm not sure how much you remember about Solomon Crowe, if anything, because he was not there that long and he never really got any kind of showcase. But just speaking of how he, his ring attire, his attitude, his moveset, like, how do you feel about current day Sami Callihan? If you remove the match itself and just talk about movesets, intensity, look, like, how do you feel about him?
He doesn't really do it for me.
Okay.
And I'm not, I'm not trying to be like a Sami Callihan hater, but this is far removed. Like I'm not bringing in the Solomon Crowe like baggage to it, because I do remember Solomon Crowe. He's meant to be sort of like this hack, like almost like a hacker, and like a punk rock hacker to a degree, like a metal hacker. Not like punk rock and metal or anywhere related on the musical spectrum, but somewhere along that path, he had the leather jacket and the spiked hair, and I never really gravitated to him when he was in NXT, and I didn't really gravitate towards him here. I didn't really find anything all that special about him. His moveset didn't really do anything for me. There wasn't anything too spectacular. I don't know. I kind of just don't like his face. I mean, there's sometimes there's just something about people where you go, nah, it's just not here. And I couldn't really put my thumb on what it is about Sami Callihan, but it's just not for me.
So I have flipped on Sami Callihan pretty hard in the last couple months, where he didn't really do anything for me in NXT because the gimmick was weird. His outfit was weird. I didn't understand what he was trying to be. Like, he was supposed to be a hacker, but then also he was like a caveman with weird hair, with like a weird hairdo, and didn't really have any hacker moves. I didn't really understand what they were trying to do. So it was just kind of a non-entity for me. I don't know why, if you're a hacker, you're like your ring gear is like orange and brown singlet. It doesn't make any sense. So, and then he left, and he went on the indies and just tore it up everywhere. Apparently I didn't really watch a lot of his indie stuff when he was fresh off of the NXT boat, as it were. But I did see him at WrestleMania weekend last year in Dallas, where he wrestled a couple matches for Evolve, and he was, I could see that he was trying something a little different, but he still kind of had the weird singlet, the weird hair, and he just seemed like he was pretending to be someone that maybe he isn't, or is maybe trying to be more like rough and tumble, or like pretending to be hard and punk, and I don't care about this. And it just didn't seem as authentic. But now, in the last couple months that I've seen him, he wrestles in jeans and that kind of collared t-shirt with a vest, or not a collared shirt, not a collared t-shirt, and a vest. And his hair is different. His attitude is different. I think he's really Chris Hero'd himself, where when Chris Hero left, no one really cared about Cassius Ohno. But then after a couple years on the Indies, he really turned it up and became just a violent psycho in the ring. He would just beat you into oblivion. And that's where Chris Hero took off again and why he got hired back. And I think Sami Callihan has finally hit that moment for me where he has a look and a feel that feels authentic. He has a violence and an edge to him that he didn't have before. I think his intensity is off the chain. He's good at crowd work. I don't really hear him cut promos very much, so I can't comment on that. But really, in the last 2 months, he's become one of my favorite people to watch because he pretty much never has a bad match. And maybe it's because he's been elevated a little bit. Like, he had a great PWG match with Brian Cage and Keith Lee, and he was a third guy in that. And he was giving pile drivers and doing everything he could do in that match against two guys that outweigh him by about 100 pounds apiece. And I become a fan. I become a big fan of Sami Callihan. I think I bought his shirt at WrestleCircus because the match he put on with Ohio is for Killers and Strickland, Rush, and Desmond was probably the best match I've ever witnessed live. But Billy, you're gonna hate it. So I mean, I've got a Sami Callihan shirt. I think that he is not long for the independent world. I think if WWE wants to give him a decent check to come back, he is ready to do it because I think he finally figured out what he was missing. So yeah, I'm a big Callihan fan. Again, he will be in this week's homework. So apologies to you, Billy, and congratulations everyone else.
I mean, I would agree with you to a degree, but I think that still some of it persists. Is that I'll give you the intensity. It's clearly there. There are also little things that I think he may have picked up when he was sort of in the WWE machine as far as working the crowd, getting crowd involved, crowd interactivity, getting crowds to clap along for a guy who needs recovery, getting them into the match. Those are like little small things that I think you pick up when you're in bigger crowds and you have fans there that are responding to the product, as opposed to sometimes when you see indie crowds that are very quiet at times, depending on the show. I do see that there with him. I think he still is trying to find an identity. I think that is still part of maybe one of the things that I saw in this match, at least with him, and part of why I'm not a Sami Callihan guy at this point, is that it does still feel like he's trying to find an identity. He still feels like there's a bit of an extension of the Solomon Crow to a degree. And that probably is just because that might be who he is. But I feel like he hasn't fully put it together yet as far as like, not necessarily who his character is, but who he wants to portray when he's in the ring. And also with that, what style he brings to the ring. Is he a grappler? Is he a striker? Is he a wrestler? Is he just an insane guy? Or is he versatile? Does he have a little bit of everything? And I think that in watching this, I still couldn't really put my finger on who Sami Callihan is. And once again, sort of watching the match play out, it was a little just too pretty for me at times. For a match that starts out as insanity, like right out of the gate, I think that's where the tone becomes a problem of itself. Because if you're gonna have like dudes getting thrown into chairs in the crowd and crazy spots all around. Then to have sort of like, I think there was just like an exchange of like super kicks and then like hook kicks together. It feels, you get what I'm saying? Like it doesn't feel as grounded as the other stuff that they're doing. It doesn't, like, part of it feels like like a real fight would feel, and then part of it feels like, hey, let's just try to do something visually cool for the fans. And it's hard to marry those two elements together.
Fair enough, man. Like I said, that's why we have these chats, because it's nice to hear alternate opinions.
That is correct. And
so let's
go ahead.
Can I give the homework out for this week?
So now that we have the homework of this past week out of the way, let's get the homework for spring break. Your spring break assignment. So you're gonna have a week off next week. And then when we come back, we'll talk about the match that Tom's going to assign. So you have a week extra to watch the match, but don't hesitate. Don't be one of those last minute people. Just get the homework done.
No, don't do that.
Yeah, get it done. So go ahead, Tom. Go ahead and give our assignment.
Just get it done, guys. Just put the nose to the grindstone. Get it done. You'll feel so much better once it's over. So, because we got 2 weeks, I'm going to give you 2 matches, one of which is going to tie into what we talk about very shortly, one of which is just going to be something that I am literally only recommending to really piss off Billy. So,
is it the House? You're not telling people to watch the House of Horrors, are you? Please don't tell people
to watch the House of Horrors match, which I have not seen and nor will I probably ever watch. So, no. Okay, so part 1 of the homework is the 6-man from the most recent WrestleCircus show. While the event itself is still being uploaded, so you can't watch the whole show on demand right now, the owners of WrestleCircus had such a positive feedback to that match, and the internet loved it so much that they actually uploaded it to their own YouTube channel, and you can go and find the WrestleCircus 6-man match online for free, no payment involved. You can just dial it up, watch it, and enjoy it. That match is Sami Callihan and Jake and Dave Christ, also known as Ohio is for Killers, OI4K, against Shane Strickland, Leo Rush, and Desmond Xavier. It's very spot heavy. It's very fast. It's very chaotic, but they have some good camera angles there, so you should be able to keep track of what is happening. You will definitely see me in the crowd losing my goddamn mind about it. Like I said, it's probably the best match I've ever seen live, and that's a combination of being in a great audience with a bunch of people that are leaving it all on the line. It's made for maximum enjoyment. If you're looking for psychology, stop watching. It is definitely one of those matches, but it does what it's supposed to do perfectly. So the other match I'm going to recommend, the super hyper piss off Billy Donnelly match, is another 6-man tag from Scrapper Mania 3, the main event, which sees the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, a.k.a. The Elite, versus the Uptown Funkers, Will Ospreay, Ryan Smile, and Leo Rush. I believe it's Leo Rush. I'm almost positive it is. I hope I'm not wrong about that. It was supposed to be Ricochet, but he had to drop out. So it is something to watch. It is a very, very good, fun match with a lot of weirdness and dancing and segues and tangents, and it's very strange, and it's definitely worth your time. But oh boy, is Billy gonna be mad about this.
You know what? So first of all, let me tell 2 things. Okay, so yes. So number 1, you're putting a lot of hype on the WrestleCircus 6-man tag, because I did see you tweet about how this was the greatest match you'd ever seen live, and I have seen a lot of other people talk very highly of it, so I am looking forward to watching it. I'm not writing it off. I am going in with an open mind, and I do hope that it blows me away like it did for other people. And in regards to the Scrapper Mania 6-man tag, this match now has been haunting me on my Facebook feed. For some reason, and this goes into the Big Brother is watching us, the Flow Slam, I believe, Facebook, which is now a part of my Facebook timeline, continues to show a sort of a sponsored preview of that match. So every once in a while, I see it just like lurking there, and I go, maybe I gotta do something right now, but maybe because it's there and like it's on my brain now, so I know it exists. We'll see how that happens. But look, I don't know if it's going to piss me off. We'll see. Because every once in a while, when the stars align properly, I can get into some super weird shit. Okay, so
this one's a weird one. It definitely has stuff that is very strange. And also, just in case, again, that's the homework for the viewers. If they are viewers, we'll table that. They might be listeners, but regardless, I will also assign homework specifically for Billy Donnelly, which is watch any Harley Race versus Dusty Rhodes match. You old bastard.
I'm going to fire up my WWE network, and I'm going to go deep, and find people getting really angry when Dusty Rhodes gets beaten up. I mean, those people would get super pissed. I mean, people got stabbed. I know the 4 horsemen had to like run for their lives at one point. Dusty was a protected guy because he was a common man. Lots of things for you to check out over our spring break here. 6-man tag from WrestleCircus. So by all means, check it out. We'll see if the hype is real. Go with an open mind. We'll hope for the best. Also,
guys, the hype is real. The match is awesome. It's just not building to anything. It's just constant craziness. It's fucking awesome.
I'm in for it. All right, I'm in for it because I have heard and I could have watched it going into the show, but in hoping that I could get the full WrestleCircus card in its entirety, I withheld.
I think you are doing the right thing. I think if you all can wait until it becomes live, I would watch that match in the context of the show because with very few exceptions, they really booked it perfectly from like how the matches flow. There's some amazing comedy matches up front. There's a good, actually, you know what, Billy? I'm gonna change my recommendation for you specifically once you get this. There is a match on that card that is Moose versus Davey Boy Smith. It's a big man match, and myself and my friends there we're like excited for it because Moose put on an amazing match with Jeff Cobb a couple months ago, so we knew how good he was, and we all know how good Davey Boy Smith can be, and we were just expecting a good Haas fight, and man, they put on a 1970s like old school work a body part, stay on the body part, do the body part match, and it was really fun because I didn't expect 2 Hosses to work that kind of a match. Man. So that's on the WrestleCircus show. So once it comes live, you get to see it. But that match is for you, Billy Donnelly.
Well, you know how much I love those reverse chin locks and those arm bars, man. I get super when I go to house shows and those moves happen. Like I fight with the crowd over them. Like I stand up and cheer, and people are like, "Who is this crazy bastard? Tell him to sit down." I'm like, "Yeah, reverse chin lock." And
but seriously, like it's a good match, but it was just not what I was expecting. I was expecting a lot of power moves because they're 2 huge dudes, and that's not what we got. And we got a really well thought out, old school wrestling match. I mean, we really got like. One guy targets the other guy's leg, one guy targets the other guy's arm, and that's what they spend pretty much the whole match doing. And it was not expected, and it was very welcome because it was not at all what we thought we were going to get.
All right, so here's what we got. So we got the 6-man tag from WrestleCircus. You could find that for free online on YouTube. So by all means, go ahead and check that out. Probably on the WrestleCircus YouTube channel. Just do a search, WrestleCircus. You should be able to find it. Watch the 6-man tag. That's your primary homework assignment for next week. Also, the Elite versus the Uptown Funkers from what was it?
Scrapper Mania 3.
Good, because for some reason I almost said Scattermania, and I knew that wasn't correct. So you want to go ahead and watch the Elite versus the Uptown Funkers. That is also on your spring break assignment. Any old Harley Race versus Dusty Rhodes match, just go to the Wayback Machine and pull that one up. Just pick anyone. It doesn't even matter where it's from. Just pick anyone. anyone. We'll have to find. There's got to be like one primary one, but anyone. Just pick anyone because they're probably all the same. And then also, if you get to watch WrestleCircus as a whole, hopefully it goes up on their VOD over the next couple weeks. By the time we come back, Davey Boy Smith versus who is it? Moose. Oh, versus Moose. That's right, Moose versus Davey Boy Smith. Sorry, all this homework. I'm out of my element here.
I need to clarify. The first two are for the listeners. The second two are for you because you are a crotchety old man.
No, they're all watching it with me. Everybody boot up Harley. You know what? Let's do a search and let's pick. No, everybody just pick one. Pick one at random. And if the one I watch from like 1975 will probably be the one you watch from 1977. Like it'll be like a carbon copy, so don't worry about it. But either way, so look, plenty of wrestling for you guys to watch over the course of the next week and a half or so by the time we come back. And yeah, we'll be back from this spring break. I'll be well refreshed, rested. I won't be tan because I don't, so I'll be sunburnt. But I will have been intoxicated for a nice week or so. As I float around wherever the hell I'm going. So plenty of things for you to watch. So Tom Nix, always a pleasure. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at the Tom Nix, TheTomNix. Get him on Twitter so he can tell you more about how his wrestling is awesome. And Dusty Rhodes and Harley Race, two legends, apparently are not.
No, they're very good. They're just for old people like me and you. That's right. Follow the extravanaire, Tom Nix, on Twitter. Follow the crotchety old man, Billy Donnelly, in Florida. Just go to his house and watch him through his window be angry at wrestling.
Hey, they already made it through 45 minutes of me and Brandon just railing on the House of Horrors, complete with a cameo by the Kennel Match. Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah. So this is one show that you picked a good one to tune into, download, and listen to. So Tom Nix, as always, a pleasure, my friend.
Yes, sir. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Man, oh man, a ton of wrestling for you to unpack this week. A ton. And that's good for you because next week we're going to be off. Sorry, ladies and gents, I hate to break it to you, but I'm going to be sailing on a cruise ship for 7 days, disconnected from the world for a bit. And as much as I'd like to talk some more wrestling while I'm taking a nice, cool, refreshing break from everyone else, it's not to be. So there will be no podcast next week. We'll be taking a week off, and we'll be back the following week with a brand new show talking about a ton more stuff. So don't forget, you got homework. You still got homework that you need to focus on and get done for that particular show. Now you got an extra week to do it. So I hope you take advantage of your spring break, so to speak, and let's get it done before we come back for next episode. Don't wait till the last minute. Don't be that guy or that lady. Just don't do it. Get it done. Okay, just get it done. Couple of quick house cleaning notes. I want to send out some congrats and some thanks and a happy birthday. So, look, one thing, I want to send congratulations out to my main man, Mike Kingston. Successful Kickstarter campaign for Headlock the Hard Way. That is his wrestling graphic novel. Reached its goal, reached all of its stretch goals. This is going to be a loaded book. So if you put some money into there, you contributed to that campaign, you got an excellent project coming your way down the line once it's finished. So my congrats to Mike Kingston. I know he put in a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of sleepless nights to raise that money. Manages to pull it off. And I look forward to getting the 4th volume of Headlocked, the first 3 books. Mwah! Magnifique! I think I said that wrong. Magnifique? Whatever, it's excellent. Also, I want to call your attention to another crowdfunding campaign that's actually still going on right now. And that is for Powerbomb. It's an Indiegogo campaign for a feature-length thriller about wrestling. The film's called Powerbomb. Still need about $2,000 to get them across the finish line. Look, every bit helps, every dollar helps, every cent helps. I'm not asking you to dig deep into your savings to contribute to the project. I mean, if you want to, I'm not going to talk you out of it. But look, if you could just give $1 or $2, just something to help them try and get across that finish line, it would be excellent. So what you want to do, you do a search on Indiegogo for Powerbomb, or head on over to Twitter, follow BJ Colangelo. She is directing that film, and she is the spearhead of this campaign. So follow that for all the details, and let's get Powerbomb made, because you know what? It'd be excellent if we could maybe get like one good wrestling movie in the vault. I mean, we got like none. So to maybe just get one, it'd be nice. It'd be real nice. Also, special happy birthday wishes go out to my 10-year-old homegirl, Izzy. You know who Izzy is if you've ever watched NXT or the WWE, for that matter. Izzy, pretty much the superest of super fans, especially when it comes to Bayley. One of the sweetest, most genuine, grounded individuals I've ever seen. And look, kids can be the worst at times. And I say that as a parent who has 2 of them. But kids can sometimes be pretty terrible. This is an excellent young woman with a good head on her shoulders and 2 fantastic parents. So Cody and Jenny, congratulations. My best. You're doing a fantastic job. And to Izzy, happy birthday to you. And my gift to you is not singing anymore to finish out that song. All right, look, house cleaning. Subscribe to the podcast, Intelligent Wrestling Conversation. Do it wherever it is that you hear your podcasts. How you heard it here? Just click subscribe. So whether that's iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Blueberry, SoundCloud, or now TuneIn, subscribe to the show so that you can never miss an episode of Intelligent Conversation. Subscribe, rate the show, so give us some stars. That'd be nice. And if there's an option for you to comment, feedback is always excellent. Let us know what we're doing good. Let us know what we're doing bad. But either way, just leave us a couple of words and tell me about the job that Intelligent Wrestling Conversation is doing and how meaningful we are to your day, your week, your year, whatever. So do that for me, and that would be greatly appreciated. Follow me on Twitter at InfamousKid, and you can also follow this particular show, which now has a Twitter handle as well, at the IWC Show. With that said, I'm getting out of here. Bon voyage. I'm hitting the high seas. So we'll be back not next week, 2 weeks. Thank you for tuning in to Intelligent Wrestling Conversation. I've been your host, Billy Donnelly. I'll see you back here next time. Peace. Intelligent Wrestling Conversation has been a podcast presentation of This Is Infamous.